Good afternoon, everyone. We'll get started. Welcome back. It feels like it's been a while since we were here. I hope people have had the chance to enjoy a bit of our very hot summer that we're having. So we'll start with a territorial acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, land on which we are broadcasting from today, is the land traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Chinootan people. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. And I just also want to just briefly say at the end of July 26th, I believe it was, we had a big announcement about 2025 University Avenue and the affordable housing partnerships and the work the partnership the city's involved with Build Now. And I was really pleased that a representative, Councillor Larry Salt, was able to join us from Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations and spoke very much in support of the project and of, as he said, linking arms with municipalities. And so we will very much continue to consult with the Mississaugas and Six Nations on the variety of projects that the city manages and operates. So just wanted to say thank you again to Chief Salt for asking him to attend as her representative. So the moment of reflection. At the beginning of this council meeting, we pause to think about the needs of our community. May we show wisdom and compassion in all our decisions. Council, does anyone have a disclosure of pecuniary interest that they want to declare? Go ahead, Councillor Freeman.
Through you, Mayor McCabe, I'm declaring on item 5A the informal public meeting for Barrel Yard 6 Merchant and 208 Father David Bauer Drive related to my placement appointment.
Okay. All right, thank you very much for letting us know. Any others? Seeing none. Okay, so we'll move forward with the first staff report, the Housing Accelerator Fund Community Planning Permit System Initiative. Well, this is a report prepared by Tanya Kurek. Thank you, Tanya. And are you David Riley?
I am, yes.
Okay,
Thank
welcome,
you.
David.
Well, thank you very much. Happy to be here. My name is David Riley, SGL Planning and Design. I'm joined today also, in addition to city staff, Catherine J. from SGL Planning and Justine Gincola from Dillon, who are also consultants on this project. I'm assuming that's being shared. Essentially, we were here at the beginning of the year to give you an update on the first draft CPP bylaw. We now have a second draft CPP bylaw, which is not the final draft, going out for consultation. And the purpose of this presentation is really to provide you an update. Community Planning Permit, or CPP as I'll refer to it, is really a new way of looking at planning, as you know, where we're combining applications for, in the traditional sense, zoning bylaw amendment and site plan approval and minor variances into one process. So the city is undertaking this project as a pilot for the Uptown Primary Node and the Herb Street Corridor, as you can see on this map. And really, the project objectives, I'm not going to read all of these because I know I have a time limit on this presentation, but it's really about housing diversity, urban design, streamlining development, and sustainability. So I mentioned what is a community planning permit system here, but this graphic here is a good way to think about it, where we're combining those three separate planning processes that currently exist into one planning process called the community planning permit system. So where there is a community planning permit system, you don't have a zoning bylaw. So once this is implemented, we will not have zoning within the Uptown Primary Node or the Herb Street Corridor, but the community planning permit bylaw is very much like a zoning bylaw in that it regulates the use of land and does all of the things that a zoning bylaw does. It just has another process requirement or a different process requirements that are more streamlined. And as you can see on this slide here, what is currently approximately a 180-day process, zoning bylaw amendments, site plan approval, then building permit, we're condensing down to a 45-day plus then a building permit process. So the system in itself is meant to be more streamlined. We've got, the way that it does that is with the delegated approvals for as-of-right applications and more minor applications where staff become the approval authority. And then the bylaw establishes thresholds where it's beyond a minor variation, it goes to council for approval. We have had a lot of engagement, as you can see, on the first draft, and we're going to start seeing a lot of engagement on the second draft, hopefully. And you can see here, that's been done through the website, public meetings, virtual and in person, an online survey, and meetings with the development industry. We have our next one with the development industry scheduled for this Thursday on the second draft. So I'll just quickly go through the updates to the first draft that you'll see in the second draft. So in general, what we've done, so where there's, we've per Bill 185, we've removed the parking requirements within the protected majors transit station area. We've also incorporated the official plan amendment number 58 modifications for height and density that permitted up to 30 stories and 900 bedrooms per hectare within certain areas, of course outside of the Laurel and Clare SBA. And we've consolidated the precincts. So when I say precincts, you can think of zones, but we use the term precincts in a community planning permit bylaw to reflect changes to the land use designations in the OP through OPA 58. We've added some additional exemptions, so this would mean applications that are coming forward where you actually don't need a community planning permit. You can go right to a building permit. That would be, as long as you comply, of course, with all bylaw requirements. That would be for detached buildings for up to 4 units, including a coach house, so a unit in the coach house, or development that is totally in accordance with a previously approved plan of subdivision or plan of condominium agreement. For notification, in the first, I mentioned class 1, class 2, class 3 applications. The difference between all those classes is who is approving it. So class 1 and class 2, staff approval, class 3, council approval. The difference between a class 1 and a class 2 is that a class 1 is where everything complies, a class 2 is where there's a variation required. And previously we had in our first draft where you wouldn't actually provide any notice of any application under class 2. We heard some comments about that, and we've updated it to actually say that a notice will be posted on the city's website for these applications, as well as a sign on the property. But everything remains as previously proposed for the rest of it. So when we're considering a change or a variation to the bylaw, the bylaw establishes within it a set of criteria that we need to use and use it to evaluate the change. We've added a requirement for the city to prioritize one criteria in particular over the rest of them, is to really, if there's a development that's providing for a good balanced mix of dwelling types, so units that include 3 bedrooms, for example, that is going to weigh more than some other criteria, and that's as an incentive to get that type of development, so more family-sized units. We've also provided some additional ability for staff to scope the extent of the evaluation required for class 2 applications. So the staff could say, well, these certain criteria don't actually apply in this situation, so we're going to use these specific criteria. For the variations themselves, we have added some clarification where variations to minimum density or lot frontage regulations are always going to be staff approval. So that's minimum lot, not maximum lot or density, I want to specify. And any variation to a site-specific provision would be a staff variation or staff approval. We've also updated some thresholds, so that benchmark between a class 2 and class 3, where a lot of them where we had at 10%, we've increased to 20%. And that was, we found in talking and looking at prior variances that have gone by, trying to mitigate the number of applications that actually have to come to council. Facility services and matters or community benefits. We've updated a few things. I won't go into detail, but did want to say that the inclusionary zoning requirements, these are separate from facility services and matters and would be rolled out through the process that is, I guess, currently underway with the current inclusionary zoning framework that you have going forward. With respect to the schedules, we've updated a few schedules. We've added a couple new schedules. Before, floodplain was actually incorporated into the same schedule as the precincts. Got a little bit confusing when looking at it, so we pulled it back out, and we've made a few updates to some of the others as well. With the guidelines, it was mostly editorial changes in terms of the comments and feedback that we received. Last time we were here at council, we talked about the certain terminology that's been updated really to reflect a little bit more about, sense of place. And just wanted to reiterate that these guidelines will form part of the citywide urban design manual. I know that the city is looking to update that as well. So in terms of next steps, we're still within phase 2, but we're nearing the end of phase 2. I'm currently kind of in the middle of that where we're speaking here, but you can see the last 3 points under phase 2 are the development industry session coming up this week. And then next week we have our in-person public engagement, and then at the beginning of August we have a virtual engagement session. Then we'll move into the final bylaw creation and implementation. And so as usual, everything is available on the Engage Waterloo website, and if you do have any comments, please feel free to reach out to Tanya sitting here, but we're happy to continue working with the city and to be here today to provide this update, and happy to hear any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, David and team, and certainly Tanya. Council, are there questions of the, go ahead, Councillor Freeman.
Through you, Mayor McCabe, can I trouble you to go back to the slide where it kind of outlines the different phases? So this one, you went past it, slide number 8, I think.
One back, I
Actually,
think.
this one will work too.
Oh, okay.
So I guess what I'm trying to understand is in the class 1, for example, under as of right, I know that one of the things that tends to come to council a lot is variations related to setbacks, especially in the uptown, and the need for 0 setbacks in many cases. So did the bylaw change to kind of address some of those things that we see happening in this corridor? We got rid of parking minimums, but did we also deal with some of these other matters such that an as of right could actually commonly happen?
Thank you, Councillor. Looks like David's going to take that one.
Happy to take that one. So what we did was, as a start, we carried forward the existing provisions in your bylaw into the CPP bylaw, really to look at it as, in terms of standards, we're keeping the same standards. But what we've done in a class 2 is actually where there's a variation proposed for things like, and I will just go to that slide quickly. It was, here we go. There are some cases where there is a, oh, no worries. Okay, perfect, thank you. Where some of these more minor changes are proposed, we've made it so that any proposed variation is actually considered by staff rather than go to council. And 2 of those things, and I'll just go to this matter, are variations to minimum density. So in some cases, it's just not possible based on the certain lot. And I should say, when we have these meetings, it's a good meeting with policy staff as well as development staff at the city, because they're processing applications and understand kind of on a day-to-day basis what's coming forward. And what's often the case is that there needs to be a change to some of these, like lot frontage or minimum density or minimum lot frontage, where an existing lot might not make it. And those matters, they're sometimes considered on their own, sometimes they're considered as a broader application where there's other variations, in which case, if it's a larger variation, it will come to council. But sometimes there's easy matters that really don't need council, that they're kind of more of a minor thing, even though they pass that threshold that we had in the first draft, that they really should just be addressed by staff, because otherwise it's more council time for really a simple matter. So hopefully that clarifies it.
Through the chair to Councillor Freeman, one additional thing to allow for that greater flexibility is we've increased the variation for staff approvals for side yard setbacks, upwards of a 50% variation from the standard. And for rear yard setbacks, we increased it to 20% for the very reason that you have asked, is in terms of the nature of some of the applications that we've been getting over time. So once again, to allow for some greater flexibility in terms of staff approvals. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah.
Yep,
Is that
okay.
okay? I have
Yep.
a few. Yeah, so, yeah, I guess, just a question to take away is 10 to 20% the right number? I don't know, because I can't remember all the variances that we've looked at in the past. You know, if the setback, and I was just gonna try to look it up, but I don't really have time, but if the setback, say 5 meters, and 10% of that, it's not very much. So that doesn't get us to 0, and which I've certainly seen in the uptown. So I guess I'm just trying to understand that. And then, so in the class 2, it also spoke about the fact that it would be posted on Engage and people would be made aware of it. So can you help me to understand the made aware of, like, is it you'd send out notices, like the Planning Act, tell people where to find it on the website?
Thank you. So for class 2, there would actually be no mail out to surrounding properties, but what's changed based on what we've heard, that, you know, if my neighbor has a class 2 application, how would I know about it if it's just simply, you know, posted online? What we've changed is that we've added a requirement for a sign posting on the property. It's similar to you can think of it similar to the minor variance process, except that there's no mail out happening for class 2 applications. And class 3 has a mail out and posted online and a sign posted on the property.
So for a class 2, when the sign's posted on the property and people go to the website, can you help me to understand how the comments that are provided through that are being used or will be used?
Yep, so that's a great question. So the comments would be sent to the contact put on the sign or listed on the website. So I'll use Tanya as an example. Tanya would actually receive the comments. You know, we haven't got to the implementation phase where we've discussed for class 2 applications if there's an internal report, an internal memo prepared, because it's not something that goes to council. But I would imagine that those comments would be documented and considered, because the way that we've framed out when notification must be posted, there is enough time there to consider comments coming in before the decision is made. And that we've structured it that way, because otherwise, if you don't allow for that time, you have to make the decision before you've heard any comments. So we've allowed for that time within this, and that timeline is set out in the bylaw itself.
So I guess just a comment for your consideration on that aspect is that because it's not a public process, I don't know how the citizens would find out how it is their comments were considered. And so, like, what the feedback loop is to the broader citizenry of how that comment was heard, how it was considered, and or if any changes to the application occurred. So you may not have an answer to that today, but it's just, you know.
Through the chair to Councillor Freeman, so what we're thinking right now in our discussions in terms of implementation is it would be akin to kind of the zone changes where there is a page on Engage Waterloo, and you can follow where in the process it is, if a decision has been made. So there will be information there that neighbors and residents and other interested parties can look at to ascertain that information.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm just going to check in with council. Okay, go ahead, council.
The other one is with the class 3. So right now, we have both an informal process and a formal process as it relates to applications, which gives the broader citizenry an informal opportunity to see something the first time, and then obviously the formal opportunity. So essentially twice they can speak to an application. With the condensed timelines under the class 3, how, like, what does that look like? Is it just one meeting?
So to answer that question, the process is different in that there's actually no statutory public meeting. Where they're able to provide comment is actually at the council meeting where the decision is being made. That's the only kind of meeting taking place. They can submit comments ahead of time, but I will just reiterate that really we are looking at streamlining development and having those shorter approval timelines through this process. And the idea is that these, the bylaw in itself and setting what is a class 2, what is a class 3, the threshold, we're doing the consultation now. And so this is everyone's opportunity to think about what those thresholds are. And this is a way for, this is a way to streamline development applications. And where there is a more major change that's a class 3, that'll be considered under that stream. But if there's an amendment to the bylaw, say someone wanted to change one precinct to be another precinct, or they wanted to change something in a way that's not at all contemplated in the bylaw, that's done through an amendment, and that process looks exactly like what a zoning bylaw amendment process looks like today, where there would be a statutory public meeting, there'd be a statutory open house as well that's required, and there could be neighborhood meetings, there could be other forms, and that would come to council. So that's something that is there. If there is a major departure from the bylaw that requires an amendment, we need to go through a public process to hear that.
Thank you, David. And Tanya, did you have an?
Yeah, just,
Okay.
I guess just one last comment. I mean, it's July, and I would think that perhaps folks that live near these areas which we're looking to do some fairly intensive development may feel as though they didn't know that this was their window of opportunity to actually speak to this matter. So I guess understanding, when's this coming back? How are we helping the citizens that live in the uptown and around these core zones to really, we've engaged the development industry. They typically have planners that are watching for these things who care about the interest of their landholders, whereas the broader citizenry assume that someone else is protecting their interests more broadly, those of us that sit around this table, and that interest will be essentially taken back in this process. And so I guess I'm just trying to understand how we're empowering the folks that already live downtown to understand about this.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Through the chair to Councillor Freeman. So in terms of, as David was saying, is really the engagement is up front. Earlier this year, we sent out a letter to every single property owner and unit owner within Uptown, as well as the Herb Corridor, plus 120 meters surrounding the area. So every unit would have received a letter informing them of this project, our timelines, where they can get updates, and what our process is. We continue to use Engage Waterloo, social media, neighborhood associations and whatnot to ensure and get this message out, always underlying that with this process, the engagement is up front, and so it's very important for everyone to be participating now. And so as noted, we have definitely increased the amount of engagement that we would typically do with other processes. And so As noted, we had indicated to, all the dwelling owners in this area and 120 meters surrounding earlier this year in terms of our notification and the process. Which wasn't a requirement, but we felt it was very important to do that upfront for the very reasons that you had indicated. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Councillor Freeman. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation, and I know you've put a lot of hard work into this process. I wanted to just actually ask a question too, but one following up on what Councillor Freeman was asking about notification, and just so the public is aware perhaps of the neighbor's variation to the original plan. I'm wondering about council. Like, is there any process, like the Committee of Adjustment sends out their monthly letter announcement to us where we understand what's coming? So if there is something that's a variation or something to that effect, if there's any consideration for how council could find out what might be happening?
Through the chair to Councillor Rowe, absolutely that is something that we can take into consideration. As David had indicated, we are right now starting to put our mind to implementation for those very reasons. So I'll make sure to make a note and that we can ensure that that's incorporated in our process so that you get notification in terms of any applications in your ward. Yeah.
Thank you, that would be helpful because often the residents are aware and then they'll come to us, and that would be helpful to just have an understanding. My second question actually is once following implementation, is there any formal reporting to council on outcomes and effectiveness of the CPPS?
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Are you going to take that, Tanya?
Through the mayor, Councillor Rowe, absolutely. So as part of this, you're absolutely right. And also in terms of this is one of the Housing Accelerator Fund grant initiatives. So we will definitely be monitoring it, reviewing it, and would definitely bring something back to council, likely around the 2-year mark, to share information about how this initiative has been, also the applications, any issues, lessons learned, or otherwise in that regard. But yes, to answer your question, absolutely, we would be doing that.
Thank you. Go ahead, you have another one?
Thank you, yes, and can you just, for anyone listening, just touch on the inclusionary zoning within the CPP versus like citywide, if it's the same process and how that looks?
Through the chair to Councillor Rowe. So as David had indicated, inclusionary zoning is part of a different section of the Planning Act. As council is aware, last year an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment were approved. But at this time, council is still deciding when to implement that. My understanding is that another market feasibility analysis will be done in the fall, and staff will be bringing a report back to council in fall with, I'm assuming, a recommendation in terms of when to implement it. I know the City of Kitchener is looking to implement inclusionary zoning in their municipality on January 1st of next year. And so council will have an opportunity. On our end, in terms of the community planning permit system, recognizing all the time and effort and work that has been put into inclusionary zoning and recognizing it is another tool to get affordable housing and actually getting affordable housing units, we would be looking to apply it at the same time it would be applied citywide. And noting, once again, I want to highlight is inclusionary zoning would be applying for properties within a protected major transit station area. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. And if I can stop sneezing, I have a comment first, and then I do have a question. Further, Councillor Freeman, to your question, a good portion of my ward is in the extension portion of this, and I can say that, and I've heard a lot from the public of it. The communication about the sessions coming up was in at least 4 out of the 5 newsletters that circulate through the neighborhood association. So my appreciation to the neighborhood team who's been helping you get that message out. The summer newsletters tend to get read a lot more frequently than some of the others, so hopefully there'll be a good turnout. My question, though, moves to more to, in that area, in my ward, there's a lot of development going on right now, and just curious, and the answer to it may be no, is there any impact this may have on some of the pieces of the development that have not yet been approved?
Through the mayor to Councillor Hanmer. So in terms of the CPP bylaw, we have included transition provisions. And what they state is that any development that happens to have a site plan application or a building permit would be exempt from the project. And so, yeah, we'd be looking to see in terms of active development applications where in the process it would be. So in some cases, if it's right at the beginning, and depending on, implementation of the CPP bylaw, then they might be exempt. In some cases, they might not be.
They might not be.
Yeah, it'll depend on where in the process the development application is and how it aligns with the transition provisions that are contained in the bylaw.
Okay, thank you for that, Tanya. Then in just furthering from Councillor Rowe's question, then if things we're going to be kept up to date on as things are coming forward in the different phases, would we also be apprised of what's happening with those that are going to fall into transition? I can think of two of them that will probably be in the transition from this. Also, curious that they may get delayed to see whether they apply this way or not. So just kind of curious to keep going on that.
Through the mayor to Councillor Hanmer, that's definitely something as a project team we can look at to see in terms of current and active development applications where they are at, and happy to offline, share and see where it would fall.
Okay. That would be good. There's one I'm a little concerned about.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
No worries.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hanmer. That's a good note, because we don't, I know which one you're thinking about. I mean, I think I know which one you're thinking about, and it's been long delayed, so we don't want to do anything that would delay it any further. So thank you for that. Council, any other questions? I just was curious around the consultation piece. And I know that you said you've sent it out through the neighborhood teams and that. I'm just wondering, have you worked through our Ready team to just make sure that we're really blanketing as many different people and groups and particularly community services as well? Because part of what I was, we've had a few different meetings, Councillor Rowe and Councillor Hanmer actually, and I were meeting with some people from community services recently and some community partners who are talking about, community connectedness and community space, like for a variety of, things that people in neighborhoods need, where they need to, sometimes it's food distribution, sometimes it's, it's a place for community to meet. So I'm just wondering if you've included any of people in that who are thinking around, I know you've included the neighborhood associations, but someone from community services who just sort of have a view of are we making sure that as we continue to intensify and develop, we're saving space for community to gather and community to meet and for some of those other sort of ancillary purposes?
To the mayor, so as indicated with the engagement that we have done earlier this year, we sent out the property letter. We've also been sending out to agencies as well as internal staff that would typically be commenting on applications, and that does include our neighborhoods group, parks group, fire, and other departments, wide cross-section. We can take another look at that, and definitely happy to circulate. We've also, circulated to the neighborhood associations, committees of council, the development industry. We have, a project email list that's about 500 people through Engage, and also we're working right now with the communications department to use the city's social media channels, which has tens of thousands of people that are subscribed, to make sure that we are as broad as possibly getting the message out, encouraging people to participate at this time, have their say, ask questions, and get clarification.
Okay, thank you for that, and I appreciate if you just sort of did a second look, because as I said, it's been in the past 2 or 3 weeks that we've been having some conversations, particularly around some higher needs community and more vulnerable communities. And it's, you know, the conversations are around like where can people kind of meet to, you know, have some programs or services offered for them. And just, I know there's parks, but this is like indoor spaces in some cases as well for things like food distribution or, you know, a variety of issues. So thank you for that. Seeing no other questions from council, then I will look to, let me just check back here. This is a look for a mover and a seconder on the recommendations, moved by Councillor Freeman, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Tanya, David, Jay, and Justine for your work on this. We look forward to the next stages of it. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is official plan review, resolution of deferred sites from phase 1 and modification requests. Welcome Rick and Adam. And we'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. So if you remember back in December, official plan 58, which was the official plan review, was adopted by council. As part of that meeting, several sites came forward and staff recommended some deferrals. So removing some sites from immediate the decision to approve at that point, because there was a few outstanding issues that we were looking to have a bit more time to review. And so they were removed from the approval process. And since then, staff have been working with different landowners and their agents to review some of these issues and to come up with some recommendations before we proceed with the second phase of the official plan review. So as you can see, this is a summary of the location of all the sites that were deferred in total. Of the 39 sites overall, staff have recommended 4 of those sites actually get an area-specific policy provision as part of OPA 58. Most of the sites were in regards to height, looking for increased height or different parameters for height on their sites. But for recommendations going forward, we're looking at doing area-specific policies for 4 sites that include some height provisions, but also some additional implementation pieces that came out of OPA 58 updated policies. The remainder of the sites will reviewed more fulsomely as part of phase 2 of the official plan review, and some sites are likely to or can be removed entirely as part of our recommendations because there's no issues going forward from staff's opinion. So of the 4 sites that were identified, there is some small increase in height, but also some clarification on the policies to make sure that there's a good transition from the existing policy framework to the new policy framework that's in place. And the mechanism that going forward would be to request a modification as part of the approval from the ministry. OPA 58 as of January 1st is now under the provincial regulation for approval. So they'll be the final authority on approving the plan. So what we're recommending is to forward 4 ASP recommendations to modify the final approval when it comes forward from the ministry. So that's pretty straightforward, and then we move to phase 2, but I'll take any questions on that.
Great, thank you very much for your very succinct report. Okay, are there questions from members of council? Okay, I'm seeing none from council. I just, I had a question around where it says in the report about deferrals that are shovel-ready. Do you have like the shovel-ready piece is, I guess I'm curious about it because, you know, we've approved, I don't know, somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 20,000+ housing units just in the last 2.5 years, that there's a lot of shovels that, like that I would deem, are those deemed as shovel-ready, but the permits aren't being pulled. So I'm just curious about like how many housing units are approved and you would deem as shovel-ready? Right,
so to the mayor, when we assess the different properties. Some sites were clearly just looking for additional permissions, but there was no imminent plans going forward. So that was probably the majority of the sites. For the ones that we have approved, they are recommended. They are developments that are pending, like they are imminent development plans that will be filed with the city once if this gets in place. So they're just development plans that are further along. They're ready to do pre-consultation or the official plan or a zoning bylaw amendment process. So that's what we meant when we said shovel-ready, that there's on-the-ground development plans imminent, ready to go, or they've already gone through like a pre-consultation process. As opposed to some of the other sites where they're just looking for a modified policy framework and they don't have any specific projects in mind per se.
So despite the current market conditions that we continue to hear so much about, so are you saying that the conversations you've had with some of the developers, so despite the challenges that are continue to be in the marketplace, there still are a significant amount of them that if these modifications are put in place, that you expect that they will go ahead? But I mean, because I know there's no guarantee, but
Yeah.
I'm just curious on sort of how certain you think, like, are they 80%, are they 90%, or do you think, how close are these to really going ahead?
Through the mayor, so these policy frameworks just allow to move the process quicker. They can go through zoning bylaws, so it enables development to go forward. Indications from speaking with the landowners was that they were, from our conversations, quite serious, quite well-developed plans, and they were ready to submit materials to the city. They just need the framework to allow it. So this would really enable that to go forward. So there still will be process going forward. There'll still be zoning to do, for example, but this will be the process that enables that to go forward, as opposed to having to go from step one to do an official plan amendment and everything that is required there.
Okay, well, I guess we live in hope that if these are approved today, that will happen, because we know there's, I mean, like I said, there's been thousands and thousands of units that have been approved that have not gone forward. So I guess I'm kind of curious why these are maybe more ready to go forward than other developments, but that's not probably something that you can answer. And my other question around this was, I don't recall the number on the report, but it says about 8 additional stories would be a moderate increase. Has that always been sort of our standard, that 8 additional stories is a moderate increase? Because that seems to me like sounds pretty significant. Is that a change sort of in our thinking, or?
Through the mayor, this was a site-specific kind of review. And for those 2 sites, that is an average of up to 8 stories. So because there's multiple buildings proposed on some of these properties, some of the buildings will likely be a little bit lower, under 38, under 35. So what was put into the ASP was an average for the site, so up to 38 stories. So in the grand scheme of things, for the site specifics, it was, from staff's recommendation, seemed to be an appropriate amount.
Okay. And then I'm just also curious and also a bit concerned about the height piece, because regionally, with my regional hat on, we know that, and just thinking of our neighbor Kitchener to the immediate south, that there's been discussions around, the height of buildings and what restrictions need to be in place or not, or how high buildings can go in order not to impact the airport and the flight plan. So could you maybe just outline kind of the thinking behind that, and what we should be, or what you are considering as staff, and what we should be, understanding as council around the, rules that are in place for NAV Canada?
Yeah, through the mayor, absolutely. That was one of the considerations that staff had in assessing these site-specific requests. So we did reach out to regional staff, airport staff, to get a better handle on some of those restrictions and requirements. And so it varies in Uptown, and we've received some updated mapping, but depending on certain areas, including the height, because you have to factor in a crane for part of the construction. So depending on where you are in Uptown, some heights can go up to above 40, some close to 50. So for these sites, we're well below that threshold. We did put in provisions to check again as part of the zoning process to make sure that that is indeed the fact, but we did check in with the airport staff and we're well below the threshold for these sites specifically.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. I think that's really important. Really important considerations because we know the airport's an important regional asset and we certainly don't want to do anything that's going to impede any of the flight paths that are already set out. So, okay, thank you very much, Rick. I appreciate it. Are there no questions from council? Okay, so then I will look for someone to move and second the recommendations, moved by Councillor Freeman, seconded by Councillor Bodley. All in favor? That is approved. Thanks very much. Okay, and Councillor Freeman has a conflict of interest on the next issue, so we will just give her a moment to exit the chambers. Okay, welcome, Amanda. So this is an informal public meeting to consider item 5A, Barrel Yards 6 Merchant, OPA 65 and Z 2512, and 2 and 8 Father David Bauer Drive, OPA 66 and Z 2513. There will be no decisions made today. Council and the public are seeing this application for the first time. Council is looking for feedback from interested parties with respect to this application. Today's comments will be taken into consideration in developing a staff position on this application, and a staff report will be considered by council during a formal public meeting at a future meeting. All property owners within 120 meters of the subject land and anyone who signs the registry will receive notice of the formal public meeting. Anyone who wants further notice of this application, including the formal public meeting and passage of any bylaw, should sign the appropriate registry located at the desk at the rear of the council chambers. There is more than one registry, so please make sure you're signing the correct one. And our planner, Amanda Wazinski, will now provide a brief overview of the application. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you, Mayor McCabe and members of council. This is an informal presentation for official plan amendments 65 and 66, in addition to rezoning applications Z 2512 and Z 2513 for the lands municipally known as 6 Merchant and 2 and 8 Father David Bauer Drive. Applications were received from GSP Group on behalf of Silver Lake Developments. The subject property is located at the intersection of Herb Street West and Father David Bauer Drive, adjacent to the rec complex, and has an area of approximately 5.24 hectares. This application is part of the Barrel Yards and intends to create towers F, G, and K. Surrounding uses include the rec complex, low-rise residential, and Waterloo Park, as well as the Uptown. This image here illustrates the location of the proposed development. Building K, or Phase 3, is internal to the site, whereas buildings F and G, or Phase 4, are located at the intersection of Father David Bauer Drive and Herb Street West. Building K is proposed to be an 18-story residential building with a total of 275 units and 344 beds. An additional 293 vehicular parking spaces are proposed to be added to the existing underground parking and structure. In regards to buildings F and G, each tower is proposed to be 31 stories, including the shared mixed-use 6-story podium. A total of 614 units and 813 beds are proposed, and an additional 690 vehicular parking spaces are proposed to be added to the existing parking. This rendering here illustrates the proposed development for Herb Street West. The building on the left is the proposed 18-story residential building, whereas the 2 towers on the right are proposed to be 31 stories in mixed use. This rendering illustrates buildings F and G, or Phase 4, from Father David Bauer Drive. In terms of the official plan, the subject lands are designated as commercial and mixed-use office with a maximum height permitted of 40 meters. They are also located within the Uptown Growth Center and primary node. They are also subject to site-specific provision areas 17 and 18. SPA 17 applies to the entire site and speaks to a maximum density of 250 units per hectare. and a maximum commercial area of 1,394 square meters, whereas SPA 18 applies to the area currently designated as commercial. It speaks to tourism uses permitting a freestanding residential and a hotel and commercial recreation. The applicant is proposing to redesignate the lands to mixed-use high-density residential from the commercial designation and to modify SPAs 17 and 18 to increase the maximum building height to 31 stories, increase the density from 250 units to 425 units across the whole site, and increase the permitted retail to 2,365 square meters. And then in terms of buildings F and G, they are similar to Building K, designated commercial. However, buildings F and G are located within the Laurel Clare Special Policy Area. And then in terms of the official plan update, or OPA 58, in December, Council approved an update to the official plan. However, lands within the special policy area, so buildings F and G, were deferred and will be addressed within the next phase of the OP. And then in regards to the zoning bylaw, the overall Barrel Yard site has 3 different zoning categories, with the proposed development area currently zoned as mixed-use office, C4-40, with site-specific zoning exemption 82. This exemption speaks to permitted uses, required setbacks, parking, and uses within the floodway. The applicant is proposing to remove the holding provision related to the railway, rezone the lands to residential mixed use in alignment with the majority of the Barrel Yards development. They're also proposing to modify site-specific exemption C82 to permit the increased density, tower height, and increased tower dimensions. The applicant has submitted a number of reports, studies, and plans that are currently being reviewed by commenting agencies. Some of the commenting agencies include the city, the region, CN, GRCA, the school board, as well as others. And then currently the submitted materials are being reviewed. Staff will continue to collect and consider all feedback and comments received from the public and commenting agencies. A staff report will be prepared with a recommendation for council at a future formal public meeting. And I'm happy to answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Another succinct report. So questions from council. Council Vasek.
Thanks, through you, Mayor McCabe. The mayor and I sit on the age-friendly committee, and one of the issues that they have been, well, members of that committee individually have been advocating for is bus access, GRT access on Father David Bauer. So is this, if it, when it moves to the formal, or are we thinking about advocating at all to the region or providing any recommendations to the region about getting access, GRT access to Father David Bauer Drive, given the proposal for increased height and density?
Oh, God. Sorry.
I think we have a clean up in aisle 5 over there. There we go. So
wanted
back
to
to
give
the question is about
GRT.
GRT and Father David Bauer Drive. I know this is an issue that's been looked at a number of times, but go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Vasek, great question. So right now the materials are being reviewed and they are circulated to the region, and the region does also circulate and collect comments from GRT. So that is currently being reviewed, and that could be something that we discuss further with the region as well.
Thank you, Councillor Vasek. Are there other questions from members of council? Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you so much, Amanda. I just have a couple questions. I'm wondering about the floodplain and the risk associated, and I'm wondering if the proposed design meets all of the GRCA flood proofing requirements, especially for the garage underground.
So through the mayor to Councillor Rowe, so currently the applicant has an approved terms of reference for flood risk assessment, and they're currently going through the process to complete that terms of reference and do the actual study. So the city has been involved in the terms of reference, so has the GRCA as well. So once the study is received, we will review it, and then it will eventually go to the province.
Thank you. I'm afraid most of my questions will have a similar answer because I know that these studies have to be reviewed. Let me just see if there's anything then that we can ask. Actually, I just wanted to ask about the intersection of Urban Caroline And considering it already is such an incredibly busy intersection with the LRT, pedestrians, cyclists. And so I'm wondering if that could be included like let me start again. Is an impact analysis possible for the Urban Caroline intersection to assess cumulative impacts from this and other developments nearby? Because we certainly have more developments on Herb Street just a little further on.
Thank you through the chair to Councillor Rowe. So for this application, a traffic impact study was submitted and is currently being reviewed by transportation. In terms of cumulative impact, that is something I can discuss with my colleagues in transportation to see if that's something that's already underway or something that they plan on undertaking as well. And I can speak to that in a future report to council as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Did you have any further questions?
Well, yes, but the studies are being reviewed, so.
Okay, great. Are there other questions from council? I'm just curious about any impacts on the hotel there. Like, could you remind us because the Delta is right there, like, is there any room if they wanted to expand, or is that room then now all taken up by these developments?
Through the chair to the chair, that is a good question. If the Delta wanted to expand, they would need to go through the site plan process and potentially get additional zoning permissions as well in terms of what their proposal would be. I can look into that further, and I can also speak to that in my comment report or my staff report to council as well.
Okay, thank you. And I mean, I'm not implying that they do want to expand or anything like that, although we certainly know we need more hotel spaces in Waterloo. I'm just curious because they're obviously a key stakeholder right in that area as well. But thanks very much for the information. I don't see any other questions from council. So is there anyone else present today who wishes to speak to this application? And I know that we have Kristen Bearsdale from GSP Group. Welcome, Kristen. And you have 10 minutes.
Thank you. I need to turn this. Oh, it's on. Thank you. I also have Alex Vandersloot here with me from Silver Lake Developments or Auburn Developments. If there's any questions with regards to the operations or management of the site, he'd be happy to answer those.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just a brief overview of the context of the Barrel Yards. I'm sure everyone around the horn or table is very familiar with the site, but it is located in Uptown Waterloo within the primary node. It has quite an extensive collection and range of community, commercial, retail, and institutional units or uses surrounding it. The two hatched lines you see, the inner circle is 400 meters, the outer circle is 800 meters, just demonstrating the walkability of the development as it exists. It also is proximate to two ion stations, one on Willis Way and one at Waterloo Public Square. So as Amanda touched on, this is stage 3 and stage 4 of the existing Barrel Yards development, highlighted on the screen. As Amanda touched on, stage 4 is the larger portion of the site located at the intersection of Herb Street and Father David Bauer Drive, where stage 3 is internal to the site. It is located along Merchant Avenue. Just a quick highlight or a quick overview of what the existing development is and the kind of overall context of the site. Previous approvals for this development were granted by the city in 2008. We went through extensive site plan applications in 2009. By late 2009, we had master site plan approvals for stage 1. We did originally have approvals for stage 4 at the beginning of development, as well as stage 2, which is the Delta, and stage 5. Stage 1 includes two existing 22-story towers with a total of 490 units. Stage 2, which is the Delta, provided approval for the Delta Hotel and the restaurant that's at the bottom. It includes 202 suites. Stage 5 at the very rear of the property, with the closest view to Waterloo Park, included two 25-story towers with a total of 368 dwellings. Stage 6, which is located kind of central to the site with frontage along Avondale Road or Avondale Avenue, provided for one 21-story apartment building that has 236 units. And then stage 7, is the most recent development, which includes a 19-story apartment building with 216 units. We're also in the process right now of seeking site plan approval for the townhouse units along Avondale Road. That application was submitted to the city back in the fall, and we're continuing to work through those approvals. So in total, there was previous approvals for 1,310 or 1,310 residential units on site, all of which are being built or in the process of being built, and a total parking expectation of 2,989 spaces. All the parking right now is provided underground, as well as some limited podium parking for stage 6 and stage 7. So Amanda touched on these, but I'll walk you through them again, the images or the renderings. The one that you see on the left-hand side of the screen is the stage 4, the two 31-story towers that will have frontage or oriented. One tower is oriented towards Herb Street, one tower is oriented towards Father David Bauer Drive. You can see there is a podium that connects the two towers on the lower level. This is a 6-story podium. The intent of that is to provide retail and commercial spaces along the ground floor. As part of the initial vision and master site plan exercise that was done in 2009 for this site, there was a pretty strong vision in trying to provide for animation at that corner, making sure that we're providing for retail opportunities, possible restaurant opportunities. That extensive side of the building has to be designed with a promenade because of the grade changes. So it's really intended to capitalize on that frontage and that exposure. And then there will be podium parking in behind that. The 31 stories towers, 2 of them will provide for a total of 6,104 parking, or 614 dwelling units. Parking will be provided underground, similar to the balance of the site, as well as part of podium parking. There is terrace outdoor amenity space that's provided for residents atop the 6th floor, and then most of the units will have balconies and their own private outdoor amenity space. The right-hand side of the screen, you can see stage 3 in the view closest to Herb Street. That is building K. It includes 18 stories and a total of 275 dwelling units. Again, capitalizing on the existing underground parking structure that's already been built, as well as providing for some podium parking. There is ground level outdoor amenity space planned for stage 3, as well as rooftop terrace amenity space planned for residents. The graphics that you see demonstrated to you right now, stage 4, this would be what you would see internal to the site. And then on the right-hand side would be stage 3, which you would see again internal to the site, as if you were standing at the back end of Father David Bauer Drive, just seeing that stage 3 tower. And then finally, this articulates the intent of that promenade and visual point of reference along Herb Street and King Street for the base of tower stage 4. Again, there's some specialty wrapping and articulation that's going to be provided along the tower to provide a nod back to the historical use of the site. Through the master planning exercise for this property, we were required to undertake a master site plan artifact and public art plan that is intended or required to incorporate some of these features and remind residents of the history of the Barrel Yards. And then here's just an aerial view of the proposed development. You can see the existing towers on the site, and then the ones that are more finely visual or more finely in tune or easier to read are the proposed towers associated with stage 3 and stage 4. We have split the applications into 2 separate applications that were submitted to the city. They're being processed as stage 3, separate from stage 4. That was intentional because of some of the layers of the framework that exist right now. So stage 3, as Amanda touched on, is located in the primary node. We've submitted an application to redesignate the site from mixed-use office or to with special policy area 17 and 18, essentially keeping those special policy areas and just fine tuning them to adjust some of the proposed uses on the site, such as commercial floor area and building height. And then similarly with the zoning, we are looking to implement the mixed-use residential 81, maximum 81 on the site. Again, modifying the site-specific exceptions to address commercial floor area, building height, tower dimension, and parking, as well as remove the holding provision. Stage 3 is separate, is outside of the special policy area related to the Laurel Creek floodway. So we don't have the same obligations from a technical analysis and justification perspective. Whereas stage 4, a large portion of the site is located within that special policy area. So similar to the changes we are proposing as part of stage 3, we are looking to seek mixed-use high-density residential, again, while modifying the special provisions on the site. But we are also required to provide justification for the official plan policies based on that special policy area and natural hazard designation. As Amanda talked about, we have been in consultation with the ministry, the GRCA, and the city with regards to the terms of reference for the flood risk assessment. And that's the specialized justification that's currently underway and being pursued with the ministry. Similarly, looking to pursue the same type of zoning for stage 3, applying the residential mixed use while modifying the site specific to address building height, tower dimension, and remove the holding provisions on the site. So next steps, circulation and review of the applications, as Amanda touched on. It is our understanding or our hope that you may see a staff report and recommendation for stage 3 in advance of what is going to happen for stage 4, simply because it's a much more streamlined process and didn't have the extensive justification that was required. We will continue to liaise and correspond with the city and the ministry regarding the stage 4 flood risk assessment within the special policy area. It's only upon review and acceptance of that special policy area justification and flood risk assessment that staff can then bring the OPA ZBA forward for stage 4 to implement the same designations and zoning. And then at that point, then we would be obligated to update the existing master site plan that applies to the entire site. That's how we have dealt with the approvals.
You have 1 minute left.
Yes, and this is my last slide. That's how we've dealt with the approvals of the overall site. We have an overall master site plan, and then as each phase comes on, we update the master site plan to reflect the details of that stage. Subsequent to that, then the intent is to submit site plans for stage 3 and stage 4. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. Council, are there questions? Councillor Vasek, go ahead.
Thanks through you, Mayor. Good to see you bring up public art. I'm happy to hear about it all the time. Is there an opportunity to connect with the city's public art staff person as well? I'm thinking about how that location is such a prominent location, particularly for Lumen. So in thinking about the context around Lumen and even Waterloo and other events that happen uptown, that it's a real prime location for public art. So it may be worthwhile to speak with the city about, you know, its overall vision for that location. Is that possible or desirable?
I just want to double check that you know what Lumen is. We know what Lumen is, but do you know what she's referring to with Lumen?
I don't.
Okay, maybe you just want to give a quick overview, Councillor Vasek.
Lumen is a light technology and art festival that happens once a year. Waterloo is a winter festival that happens once a year, but there's multiple other festivals, but yeah, that's what I was referring to.
Yes, yeah, and okay. Lumen, it's a good point, because Lumen brings in somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 to 40,000 people. It's a fantastic event in the community, so go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. So as part of the complete application package, we did submit an urban design brief at this point, which provides a high-level overview of that wrap and the intended animation and the intended art or anything like that that's going to happen associated as part of stage 3 and stage 4. Getting into the real details of what those public art pieces doesn't happen until we get into the site plan stage for stage 3 and stage 4, but it's definitely something to take note of. I also offer, there is a public square that's in the center of the site that I understand is quite highly used. The public has access to it. As Mr. Vandersloot is here and listening to this, that's probably something for him to take back, as well as for Auburn to consider. I believe that there are systems in place that you can apply for permits and for uses of that space as well, so for those types of events.
Great, that's excellent. Can I ask a follow-up of staff then? Is it possible then for you also to work with the Arts and Creative Industries team around this moving forward? Yeah, thanks.
And as well, I guess the ownership of, or whoever the property managers at the square there, that's a really interesting possibilities. Thanks for asking that. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I have a few, like three or
Okay,
four.
go ahead.
I just actually, while you were discussing the public art and the wrap, I'm just wondering environmentally if that is a wrap that will degrade and have to go to the landfill and be replaced over time.
Through the mayor, I will have Alex speak to that because he can probably provide much more fulsome information about that.
Welcome, Alex.
Thank you very much. As Kristen said, Alex Vandersloot, Development Manager with Auburn, which is, operating in this instance as Silver Lake Developments. So the cladding of the podium is a perforated metal panel that is etched imagery on it. So it's not a wrap that's applied to a surface. It's the surface itself is an etched metal, which then you can put anything you want onto it. Our hope is that it has a very long lifespan, and there's warranties that we're discussing with the potential suppliers. But I mean, you're in the neighborhood of 50 plus years. The lifespans that they estimate or promise for these types of systems.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. Okay, I have a couple of other questions. I'm wondering if there's any intention or plans for affordable units within the buildings.
So, as was mentioned during the CPPS presentation, we are aware that inclusionary zoning, was approved and then deferred. So, we are anticipating, based on the timing of this project, that likely there will be inclusionary zoning affordable units required. The intent is generally to provide market rate units, has been the approach for the barrel yards, and it's Auburn's business model generally. So at this time, the affordable aspect would be scoped to essentially the inclusionary zoning units, which I think is it, I can't remember what the original set aside is. It's 2, 3, or 4% of the overall units or floor area in this station area. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I just wondered as well, in terms of the environment and the landscaping, I'm wondering if there's any consideration for naturalized stormwater features such as rain gardens or permeable pavers, et cetera, to help manage the water from that site.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the reports which is under review and the outcome of that will be determined is the stormwater report, of course. One of the things that we've made sure to do along the Herb and Father David Bauer frontages is to ensure that there's a healthy setback of the not only the buildings but also the raised pedestrian promenade relative to the street. So we have a really healthy landscape buffer along the edge of this development. I want to say it's in the order of 8 to 10 feet before from the property line in, where we can do all sorts of good things. It's a great amount of land to be able to plant trees in, which is great, and get those soil volumes that we need to sustain the trees. So yes, the LID measures are being looked at in concert with the overall stormwater approach for the site, and is spoken to in that stormwater management report from our engineers.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through Mayor McCabe. I'm curious if, I mean, you had noted some of the history of the site goes back to 2008 when it was originally approved, and I could certainly appreciate some of the changes from an office and a commercial perspective in the uptown, and the justification for why you might want to consider something different on the site now, nearly 20 years later. I'm curious, having not been on council back in 2008, whether these types of heights were contemplated back then, whether the proposal back then had other justifications, and this might be a staff question, for why a lower height at the corner of Urban Father David Bauer Drive was appropriate, and sort of why you came to the place that you're at today to seek what is essentially twice the height than what is currently approved.
I will take a, through you, the mayor, I will take a stab at this, and then perhaps Joel will interject. Joel and I both have been involved with this project since 2008, so we have quite a history. The original approvals, the original application approvals for this project predate any discussions with regards to LRT, ION, rapid transit. So first and foremost, that's a very significant change that's happened since the initial approvals. As I indicated previously in my presentation, stage 4 was initially contemplated to be brought on as part of one of the first stages of development, and even at that time, Auburn had difficulty securing potential tenants for that office space. Time and time again, it has proven difficult to secure individuals or secure interest enough so that they were willing to move forward with the office space at that corner. That's why stage 4 was kind of set aside to deal with as the last component, and that's why we're here today. I think timing was quite ironic, the article that was out a week or two ago about the significant vacancy in office rates. It's something that I believe Auburn echoes. On top of that, on the need to provide for more housing opportunities in Waterloo. And I'll defer to Joel if he has anything to add to that.
Thank you. Did you want to add to that, Mr. Connor?
No, Kristen did a good job summarizing.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Did you have a follow-up, Councillor? Okay. I just note on the office space thing, there was a report on CBC this morning about commercial industrial space, but that the need was more for smaller spaces rather than the bigger spaces. So anyway, just for people's consideration. So are there other, Councillor Rowe, did you have some additional questions? You'd mentioned you had a number of questions. No, you're good? Okay. Just a quick question from me then. Just to note, the special policy area, just to put this out on the table, we did work pretty hard as a city over pre my time, and then certainly during my time in office, around working with the province to try and get some changes, an amendment to the special policy, the building code on that. So they turned us down on that front. So I just wanted to state that we understand that can be a lengthy process, and we did work really directly with GRCA and the province to try and figure out a way to kind of improve how that process works. But again, you don't have to comment on that. I just wanted to let you know that we'd put a significant time and energy into that. My question though is about the energy plan for these buildings. Are you looking at using, is there geothermal, is there heat pumps, or are you looking at renewable options for heating and cooling these spaces? Or I'm not sure how the existing buildings are heated or cooled.
So I would say generally conventionally heated and cooled. So in every unit we have a heat pump, and then there's a boiler system as well for each tower. We are precluded, because it's a brownfield site, we are precluded from geothermal. It's a regional Waterloo policy. Unfortunately, we have another brownfield site in Kitchener where we're precluded from geothermal. In conversations with Waterloo Region Community Energy, apparently there's been discussions between that group and the region about new approaches to geothermal. We have a project in London where we're planning to do geothermal. So it's something that we're looking at as a developer. Unfortunately, on this site, for other reasons, it's not possible. As I said, each unit has a heat pump, and then there's the boiler system as well. Wouldn't say there's a departure on these towers from what the approach has been on the other towers at the barrel yards.
Okay, thank you. I mean, it's good to know that you're using heat pumps and that at the very least, and that you've looked into the geothermal piece, so thanks for that. And, I know this is an informal public hearing, but if this were to be approved, do you have a sense of when shovels might be in the ground?
Yeah, absolutely. So we continue to work away. We have 943 units under construction right now, 528 in Kitchener, 415 in London. We're also about to start a project in Cambridge with a partner, 600-unit project. So we continue to work away. Auburn has its own general contractor, so we're somewhat vertically integrated, which is helpful to allow us to keep building. So the plan is to roll from official plan and zoning amendments. Hopefully they get approved. As Kristen said, stage 3 will proceed in advance of stage 4 because of the extra piece with the special policy area and dealing with the province on the flood risk assessment. So the plan is to roll from zoning approval into site plan approval and right into building permit. So our goal would be construction in 2026 on stage 3, which is that 18-story tower. We are as interested in everyone as seeing the Barrel Yards project finished off. And so, as I said, we've been stuck, unfortunately, in the market with these land uses and designations that we thought we wanted a long time ago. And as we worked our way through the rest of the Barrel Yards, essentially we knew we were going to get to this point. But we are, as I said, we continue to work on our other projects. And the plan would be, as soon as we have zoning, to get into the site plan approval process and into building permit on stage 3. And then hopefully, we expect that the process with the province on the flood risk assessment is going to take a while. I mean, I think what we've been told kind of informally by others that have gone through the process is expected to take about a year. So that can run its course while we're working on stage 3. And then once stage 3 is kind of built out, we can then finish off with stage 4 and get that corner, done and over with and the project built out.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I appreciate the comprehensive answer. So seeing no other questions from council, thank you very much. If there are no, is there anyone else here who wishes to speak to this application? No? Okay, seeing none. If there are no more delegations, this informal public meeting is now concluded. Staff will review the issues and will provide further reporting to council at a later date. Thank you very much. So moving along to the next one. This is an informal public meeting to consider item 5B, 170 Columbia Street West, OPA 67 and Z 25-14, and 180 Columbia Street West, OPA 68 and Z 25-15. Again, there will be no decisions made today. Council and the public are seeing this application for the first time. Council is looking for feedback from interested parties with respect to this application. Today's comments will be taken into consideration in developing a staff position on this application, and a staff report will be considered by council during a formal public meeting at a future date. All property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands and anyone who signs the registry will receive notice of the formal public meeting. Anyone who wants further notice of this application, including the formal public meeting and the passage of any bylaw, should sign the appropriate registry located at the desk at the rear of the council chambers. As there are more than one registry, please make sure you sign the appropriate one. The planner, Amanda Wazinski, will now provide a brief overview of the application. Welcome back, Amanda.
All right. Thank you, Mayor McCabe and members of council. This is an informal presentation for official plan amendments 67 and 68. In addition to rezoning applications Z 2514 and Z 2515 for the lands municipally known as 170 and 180 Columbia Street West. Applications were received from Up Consulting, on behalf of 170 Columbia Waterloo and 180 Columbia Waterloo. The subject lands are highlighted in red and are located north of Columbia Street West and west of Phillip Street. The combined area of each property is 1.59 hectares with a combined frontage of 91 meters. The subject lands are currently occupied by office buildings that would be demolished to facilitate the development. In regards to the proposal, the applicant is proposing a phased development. Phase 1 is located on 170 Columbia Street, is directly adjacent to the street, and is proposed to be 41 stories. Phase 2 includes the pop space internal to 170, as well as the 41-story tower at the rear. Phase 3 is located on 180 Columbia Street, is directly to the street, and is proposed to be 41 stories. Phase 4 is internal to 180 and is proposed to be 37. And Phase 5 is located at the rear of 180 and is proposed to be 37 stories. This slide here includes 4 conceptual renderings of the proposed development. The top 2 images illustrate the 3 towers proposed on 180 Columbia Street. The bottom left image is a perspective from Columbia Street, and the bottom right image illustrates the pop space. In regards to the official plan, the lands are currently designated as employment and business employment. They are further designated as high-density employment with a height of 81 meters, are within a major node, and are within the R&T Park protected major transit station area. Official plan amendments are being sought to redesignate the lands from employment to station area mixed use, which is in alignment with OPA 58. The applicant is proposing to remove the business employment designation and redesignate the lands from high-density employment 81 meters to high-rise 30 stories, which is also in alignment with OPA 58. The applicant is proposing to implement a specific provision area to permit a maximum building height of 41 stories. And then through ROPA 6, which was the region official plan, the lands were designated as urban area from employment. And then in regards to the city's official plan amendment 58, the lands are proposed to be redesignated as station area mixed use, which contemplates for a maximum height of 30 stories. In regards to the zoning bylaw, the subject lands are currently zoned as holding business employment 2A zone. Currently, a height of 25 stories is permitted. The applicant is proposing to rezone the lands to residential mixed use with site-specific provisions. In regards to building height, the applicant is proposing to permit a maximum height of 41 stories. In regards to density, the applicant is proposing a maximum density of 1,613 bedrooms per hectare, whereas the RMU zone permits 750 bedrooms per hectare. The applicant is proposing a podium height of 22.5 meters and 7 stories, whereas the RMU zone permits 21 meters and 6 stories. They're also proposing to permit a maximum tower separation of 7.5 meters to the west and 9 meters to the east interior property lines, whereas a minimum of 11 meters is required. In regards to the street line setback, they're proposing to increase the minimum street line setback to 11.8 meters to align with the geometry, so the axis and angle of the property. And then the applicant is proposing a reduced landscape open space only on 180 Columbia Street of 21%, whereas 30% is required. And finally, the applicant is proposing to lift the holding provision relating to the adjacent railway. And then in terms of studies, the applicant has submitted a number of reports, studies, and plans that are currently being reviewed by commenting agencies, including the city, the region, CN, and the school boards, as well as others. And then in regards to the next steps, currently the submitted materials are being reviewed. Staff will continue to collect and consider all feedback and comments received from the public and commenting agencies. A staff report will be prepared with a recommendation for council at a future formal public meeting. And I'm happy to answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Council, are there questions? And again, a reminder that this is an informal public meeting and only questions of clarification may be asked. Council members should not express opinions at this point. Did I see Councillor Rowe? Thanks. Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, Amanda. Once again, I have many questions that all of the reports have to be reviewed before you can answer, so I can ask them down the line for the informal. But just for the record, I have questions about transportation and the intersection of Columbia and Phillip, considering that's a #1 collision reported intersection in the city, and the addition of what 600 vehicles could look like at that intersection. And I know that you will talk to transportation staff about that. And I'm also interested in the shadow from 41 stories on the surrounding neighborhood, and not just residential impact, but sidewalk comfort, that kind of thing, because that will be a considerable I'm sure, impacts, and stormwater from that size of site as well. What I can ask is, how close will the buildings be to the train tracks, and is that considered adequate and safe?
Through the chair to Councillor Rose, the applicant is currently proposing a 9-meter setback from the property line to the building. 15 meters is required by the zoning bylaw.
Okay, so we will talk about that later. And then my other question is about tower separation. And I know that there is a request for reduced tower separation. So I'm wondering if the tighter tower spacing is going to affect the light, privacy, and livability in that space.
Through the chair to Councillor Rowe, so the applicant did submit an urban design brief, and they submitted architectural drawings, landscape drawings, and a shadow study, which does speak to those elements. That's currently being it's currently being reviewed, and the reduced setbacks to the tower is definitely something we take into consideration when we're reviewing those studies and reports.
Thank you. And one more. I'm just wondering about the amount of proposed green and public space there, and if that's considered adequate for the number of residents.
Through the chair, currently the applicant is proposing a POP space of approximately 1.8 hectares. Typically, parkland dedication is to be free and unencumbered, whereas this POP space has 2 levels of proposed underground parking. So if it is not accepted as POP space, we also have like a POPs guideline that has a number of criteria. I'm currently reviewing that along with our colleagues in parks to see whether or not it meets that criteria. And if it's not accepted, or if it's not accepted at 100%, the balance will be paid in cash in lieu. And if that green area were to remain, it could potentially be landscape open space, it could be amenity space. But to do that, potentially, additional site-specific provisions would be required to allow for that interpretation.
Okay, thank you. We will discuss again.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Freeman.
Through you, Mayor McCabe, I had a question whether or not the land use compatibility study is going to be peer reviewed.
I have not currently peer reviewed it, but that is an option I'm looking into to get it peer reviewed.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, Valley Blades has been a long-term employer in the city of Waterloo, and I just don't know whether or not their interest has been adequately considered. And also there is some land there that is undeveloped, and so looking at those proposed uses and whether or not those proposed uses are also compatible, I just wondered if we'd looked at that.
Through the chair to Councillor Freeman, currently the study is not peer reviewed, but that is something I'm actively exploring to see whether or not it should be, and I will take that into consideration.
And then
Sorry, Councillor, just a reminder on that, Valley Blades is actually moving their location. They're moving up to Northfield and near Lobsinger line.
Yeah, is that approved? Has the construction happened?
Oh, they haven't started, I mean, they're.
Like, a lot of times those are in plans for industries and.
Well, I announced it in my State of the City, so I'd better go ahead. No, my understanding is that they're planning on moving ahead with that, but just wanted to put that on the record as well. But go ahead with your other question.
That isn't included in the compatibility study as something that is for sure. So I'm just putting it out there.
Sure.
It happens a lot where.
Fair enough, yeah.
Industries have to make different financial decisions.
Sure, fair enough.
On the pedestrian wind comfort, I didn't look at the study, but is there any mitigation that's required to make the pedestrian realm more walkable?
Through the chair, I'm currently reviewing the wind study. I believe there were some mitigation measures proposed at certain outdoor spaces, just depending on the season, but the consultant is here, and I believe he'd be able to answer that more wholesome.
And then my other question was with regard to the noise and vibration assessment. Am I right? I thought it said that it wanted a class 4 designation for this site. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Freeman, I don't recall that. The noise study is going to be peer reviewed, and I can confirm that for you offline.
Okay, I mean, there's a lot of noise associated with the rail corridor, so and the transportation corridor, so I'm not contrary to a class 4, I'm just trying to understand if that's planned. And then again, when you look at the other uses surrounding that area, the other employment uses, like, I think a data center might be included in one of those uses, and those are noise and vibration intensive uses. And so again, a class 4 might be realistic to make sure that the other lands surrounding this property are able to be used for all of the intentions.
Great, thank you very much for noting that. I see that Amanda has made notes of that. Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McCabe. I'm going to try and get in the habit of asking this whenever we see developments coming along the trail here. Often when we see this type of a development, we think about the traffic study and we look at possibly road widenings and things like that. Obviously, that's not necessary here on Columbia, is already a 4-lane road. But knowing that one of our largest active transportation corridors is right in behind where this development is going to be, have we given any thought as to whether or not we may need to contemplate twinning that trail, finding a way to add a sidewalk there that would separate pedestrians from cyclists in a really high AT area in the city?
Through the chair to Councillor Bodley, that is an excellent question. That is actually one of the questions I've posed to my colleagues in transportation and active transportation, and I can confirm that further at the formal public meeting.
Thank you very much. Did you have a follow-up or another? Okay, thanks very much. That was going to be one of my questions as well, is just because, yeah, it's such a, I mean, there's already issues at that corridor, as Councillor Rowe noted, and it's like, how do we make sure that it's safe for everyone using whether it's walking, cycling, rolling, or in a vehicle? So thanks very much. Other questions from council? Seeing none, okay. Actually, could you just, one of my questions is, I don't believe you mentioned it, but what are or maybe I missed it, what are the types of bedrooms? Did I miss that?
Through the chair, you didn't miss that. I do have it written down. It is a mixture of 1s, 2s, and bachelor. I don't have the exact percentage, but it is a mixture of all 3.
Okay, but no 3s?
No 3s.
Okay. Oh, hold on, that's prompted a question from Councillor Rowe.
No,
Or
sorry,
is it for Amanda, or is it
Yep.
for? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, sorry, if you're done with that one. Yes?
Go ahead.
I actually forgot to ask Amanda, this is 41 stories, which is certainly higher than we've seen in the area with Northdale, et cetera, and the university. So I'm wondering, for anyone listening, if you can just provide the explanation of that height in that location.
Yeah, so through the mayor to Councillor Rowe, that is a good question. These lands are within a protected major transit station area, and they are also within a primary node as well. And there's different areas in our official plan, but those are some of the areas where the official plan encourages the more of the intense and higher uses to locate. 41 stories does exceed the current permissions within the official plan, and we are taking a look to see whether or not that is an appropriate permission in terms of the shadow study, in terms of the urban design brief. Are there ways the building could be addressed and perhaps have more step backs or other design modifications if the 41 stories were to be permitted and approved by council?
Thank you, and I think there's 2 ion stops within that area as well, yes? Thank you.
And so just another question that I had was just around the separation from the rail line, because it's 15 meters is what we require. Could you just explain why it's 15 and what, and I know that it's been proposed at 9, but what that difference would make? What's the rationale behind the 15 meters? And what would we potentially, is it a safety issue, or what would the impact of potentially changing that be? Okay, go ahead, Joel.
In response to your question, Mayor McCabe, the 15 meters is driven out of guideline recommendations by CN in terms of separating rail lines from active development, and it's essentially a protection measure. Should a train derail, they're looking for a minimum amount of space to allow for the trains to potentially leave the track, or for somebody to work on a train that is near the tracks from sensitive development at the end of the day. So there is scenarios where it can be reduced, but that requires evaluation through negotiations with CN. So that'll be part of this assessment.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that. Oh, and go ahead, Amanda.
I just want to add further to what Joel said. The applicant did submit a development viability assessment, just speaking to the 9 meters to the podium, and then it is 15 meters further up the setback from the rail line. So they did start that justification process, and it's currently with CN.
Okay, okay. Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Amanda. Thank you for answering all our plethora of questions on the informal. Councillor Rowe's comments around the height of the towers prompted another question for me. And will there be, or has there been, consideration of some of the land use that's happening around the property? And I'm thinking a little bit further north from where the property is, and knowing that there may be some uses that will require flight paths and things like that. Will that be considered?
Through the chair, that is being considered in the review of this application. I know personally, I can take a look at everything that's currently there and the permissions for surrounding
What's being
properties.
planned?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hanmer. Councillor Freeman.
Sorry, just getting back to the RAC guidelines, like the FCM guidelines for trains. I think it's also if a rail car tips over, because they're a certain height. So it would seem to me that if that is, like, how do the crash walls and everything come into play? Because typically if you want to have a lesser setback, you have to build a fairly significant crash wall. Like, who requests all that? Is it CN or?
Go ahead, Joel. It looks like she's looking at you.
Yeah, through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Freeman. It would be a request from the applicant to CN, also to the region of Waterloo, who owns the rail corridor. Ultimately, the region will make the decision, but looks to CN for advice. And you're correct, it could potentially be reduced, the setback, where certain noise barriers or physical barriers, I should say, for train derailment are provided to protect the rail system and the integrity of the rail system. So it's a submission from the applicant directly to the region and CN. We'd certainly be involved because we'd want to understand what the implications are, but we would take the lead from those two jurisdictions.
Thank you, Joel. Did you have a follow-up?
I just thought the crash wall was also to prevent damage to the foundation of the building and be safe for the people if a train derails. Like, I didn't think it was just related to the rail car and the operation of the corridor.
Through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Freeman, the crash wall is intended to protect, I think, both the development and people within the development, and it can form part of the development. So, for example, the development that is being constructed at 535 Quiet Place, the parking structure has an integrated crash wall within it, and the parking structure and the exterior wall meet CN's crash wall barrier to provide the parking needed for the development. And then the more sensitive uses, the residential components of that development, are set back further away from the rail line for mitigation-related measures, but also crash-related measures.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I think that's all the questions now. Amanda, thanks very much. Is there anyone else present today who wishes to speak to the application? I know that there's the planner, David Galbraith, is here, so I will invite you to go ahead, David.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. My name is Dave Galbraith. I'm the president of Up Consulting and a registered professional planner. Here today on behalf of N8 Developments, who are proposing the redevelopment of 170 and 180 Columbia Street West. If you're not aware of N8 Developments, they've done a lot of local projects, including the SAGE projects in Waterloo, DTK in downtown Kitchener, and the tech tower that's under construction right now as well in downtown Kitchener. So in terms of the site location, the property, it's actually two properties divided by a common drive aisle. The drive aisle leads to an additional office building behind the two sites, which is addressed as 176 Columbia Street West. The drive aisle is shared between the three properties, providing access for cars and pedestrian access through the site as well. So there have been two separate groups of applications submitted, one specific to 170 and one specific to 180. But when we worked to develop this concept, we looked at it holistically to ensure that it would work together. So the site has an area of about 1.6 hectares and 102 meters of frontage along Columbia Street West. Currently, it contains two multi-tenant office buildings, with 170 being a one-story office building and 180 being a four-story office building. So in terms of the location of the site, this slide shows adjacent land uses as well as the location of the site in between two LRT stations, one towards the top, the Research and Technology Park, and the University of Waterloo station to the south. Both are about 500 to 600 meters away from the site. The site is also northeast of the University of Waterloo and northwest of the Northdale area of the city of Waterloo. There are a number of surrounding industrial uses that have already been discussed today, primarily to the north of the site. And then, of course, we have the Research and Technology Park on the other side of the tracks. So Amanda did a good job summarizing the existing policy context, but the planning controls that are applicable to the site are kind of evolving right now concurrent with these applications. So within the region of Waterloo's official plan, the site is designated built-up area. It was recently removed from employment land designation along with much of the surrounding area, and now is part of the urban area. The City of Waterloo's official plan designates the site business employment, and as a result of OPA 58, if and when approved by the province, it will be station area mixed use. Corresponding in the city zoning bylaw, both of the sites are business employment 2, which allow for buildings of up to 81 meters in height currently, and would require a mix of residential and non-residential uses. So in terms of the development proposal itself, the concept contemplates 5 towers between the two properties with over 2,400 units and 3,200 bedrooms. Within the development, primarily at grade, facing the public spaces, is about 1,500 square meters of commercial space, or about 18,000 square feet of commercial space, again integrated into the base of the development. In terms of the site layout itself, as I mentioned previously, we have the common drive aisle running down the center of the site. We are proposing a new right-of-way along the east side of the property, just recognizing that this is an area that's likely to change over time. And the purpose of that drive aisle is that it will service this development, but it could be extended as a mid-block connection in the future to provide access to neighboring properties. In terms of loading, we have tried to keep loading activities, garbage collection and the like, to the perimeters of the site. So we have along the west side, there's a drive aisle that would be mostly used for access to underground parking as well as garbage collection as well. And then the common areas within the development, so we have the large pop space, which is about 40 meters by 50 meters, would benefit the entire development. As Amanda had mentioned, it is currently proposed as a privately owned, publicly accessible space. So the intention would be that it could work towards our parkland contribution, but beyond that, it does provide a landscape benefit in favor of the development itself. To ensure ease of access, Uber deliveries, we've contemplated a number of short-term parking spaces throughout the development, which you can kind of see between the towers and the pop space, which would allow for short-term pickups and drop-offs. So the height of the buildings range from 37 stories to 41 stories. It's the intention of N8 to move forward with phase 1, which is the building in the southeast corner, as soon as possible. They're proposing this tower as a purpose-built rental, which is new for them. Historically, they've done condominium, and it's their intention to work through the CMHC MLI Select program. And as part of that, and I'm sure this question will come up, there would be an affordable housing element within the development. And the current intention is that 10% of the units within the first phase would be affordable for a period of 20 years at a minimum. And then alongside that, as part of this program, it's the intention for that first tower to exceed the National Building Code's sustainability standards by 20%. So the next couple of slides show renderings of the project from different perspectives. This is from the southwest of the site. So if you were approaching the site from the University of Waterloo and the trail system there, and the LRT system in between. This is a perspective from the east as you would be driving down Columbia Street. And then this is a rendering showing the proposed pop space in between. Doesn't show many landscape details right now, but that would be confirmed through a future site plan process. So Amanda has walked through this, but essentially the purpose of the applications, or the official plan amendment applications, are to designate the site stationary mixed use, which is already proposed for the site through OPA 58, but there would be a site-specific provision to allow for the proposed building heights. And then the zoning amendment applications specific to 170 and 180, again, being advanced to permit the proposed height and density of the development. And then with tower separation, I did want to provide a bit of clarity here. So for 170, we are proposing a reduced tower separation to the new right-of-way that's being proposed, so not the existing lot line, but there's actually going to be that new drive aisle there. And then to the west, it would be to the rail line. But all of the towers that are actually proposed on site are a minimum of 25 meters away from each other. And then to ensure that appropriate studies are completed before the introduction of a sensitive use, holding provisions are requested as part of this application to require a record of site condition and then the aeronautical assessment sign-off by the region and NavCan before final approval. So a number of technical studies are under review. Lots of questions about that, but we're open to any comments that you have right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Appreciate the presentation. Councillor Vassick.
Thanks through you, Mayor. Hello. Thanks for your presentation. I have an urban design question. The podiums look relatively short and the towers look really tall. So I'm just curious if those proportions would align with the urban design guidelines or if there might be more balanced proportions in that way. I don't know if that would work with the rest of the site, but it's just an urban design question, so.
Through the chair. So the podiums, the renderings don't really give it justice, if you will, but they have been designed in accordance with zoning regulations, which are informed again by urban design direction. They're all proposed at 6 stories currently. So, but they have been designed to reflect the zoning regulations.
Okay, thank you. Did you have a follow-up to that? No? Okay. Other questions from members of council? Councillor Rowe?
Yes, through you, Chair. Thank you so much for the presentation. Can you just expand a little bit? You had said that the phase 1 will be purpose-built rental. So what about the other phases?
Through the chair. So this is a large project. It's, I think full build-out would probably take between 10 and 15 years realistically, moving from one tower to the next. Right now, rental is what's being developed, right? So I think the applicant would certainly monitor market conditions and adjust accordingly. I can't speak to the other 4 phases at this point, but historically they have done condominium developments, but they're looking to get into the rental space as well.
Thank you. And I'm thinking about the sustainability that you mentioned. And if I recall correctly from the package, the use of cisterns, et cetera. And I'm wondering if the water will be reused. Is there any plans for that type of thing in terms of stormwater, et cetera?
Through the chair, I'm not sure about gray water reuse or brown water reuse, but I can certainly take that back and provide more information at the next meeting.
Just curious for the park space.
Were you looking for David to expand a bit more on some of the other sustainability issues, or? Yeah, I thought you had that as part of your question too.
Sorry, that was, yes, and I'm just curious what some of those other sustainable measures are that will be above and beyond.
Through the chair, I believe through the site plan process, again, for phase 1, there is a commitment to exceed the National Building Code sustainability measures by 20%. Those will be confirmed through the site plan process. I can't confirm them right now, but that is the commitment and requirement of that program.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rowe. Are there other questions from members of council? Seeing none, I'll just pick up on the sustainability piece, because you mentioned, I know you said you're starting with the rental, the tower that will be rental, and you want to exceed the National Building Code. But are you considering that as well when you build out the rest of it? I know you said it would also take 10 to 15 years, so things may change, but or was it just the rental building that you were thinking of having those higher sustainability standards in place?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, that would be specific to phase one, but there was a sustainability report submitted for the broader development as well. So it's certainly the intention to include sustainability measures as part of future phases, but for phase one, again, it would be 20% beyond the building code, and then as the development moves forward, the measures that have been contemplated within that report would be, reflected within the overall build out of the site, but adjusted if they do go the MLI Select program in the future. Again, you likely see the similar measures as the first phase.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just, could you, I believe Amanda had said in her presentation that it's 1 bedrooms, 1 plus den, and some 2 bedrooms. Could you just maybe give us a bit of a snapshot of what the housing needs are in Waterloo? And why sort of those are the size of units that you're looking at?
I don't know if I can speak to broader, housing needs throughout the community, but this does provide a good range. There's, I think it's about 30% of the units would be the 2 bedrooms, so they're not all the crammed in bachelor type units. And again, this is, it's important to remember that this is a zoning approval. It's not locking in unit types at this point. So certainly as the project moves through future phases, there's the ability to adjust. I think you probably would have seen within the Northdale area over time, the tendency for earlier developments was the 5 bedrooms, and then went down to a lot of bachelor suites. So it's very organic, right? And it will largely be dictated by market conditions at the time of the future site plan approvals.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. And I'm just, what was my other question here? Oh, it was about the separation from the rail line. So just wondering if you could give us sort of the rationale behind your request to reduce it from 15 to 9.
Sure. So I probably have way too much experience dealing with rail line issues. I provided planning services for the Cortland and Block Line development in Kitchener, which is right beside the shunting yard. So I'm pretty familiar with the rail separation, but we did hire a Dillon consultant to do a development viability assessment. And what that does, it looks at both physical separation, but also matters related to pedestrian safety, noise, vibration, and train speeds as well. Within this corridor, the bulk of the trains that are moving are LRT trains. And that's not something that's really within the purview of the FCM RAC guidelines. The trigger here for the increased setbacks is that there are occasional freight trains that go along this corridor. I believe it's twice a week along here. And they're very slow moving trains because they're along the same corridor as the LRT tracks. So the technical study from Dillon looked at all of these different considerations, and they were comfortable with the setback, and they did not find that a crash wall was warranted. But as Amanda has said, CN will be reviewing this. We've already had some preliminary discussions with them to get background information to inform these studies, but it will certainly be reviewed and confirmed through the process.
Okay, thanks for that. That's helpful to know. Are there any other questions from council? Okay, seeing none. Thanks very much, David. I appreciate it. Is there any other person here who wishes to speak to this? Seeing none, if there are no more delegations, this informal public meeting is now concluded. Staff will review the issues and provide further reporting to council at a later date. Thank you very much. Okay, so the next item here is a zone change application. This is a formal public meeting to consider item 5C, zone change application Z1614, draft plan of subdivision 30T-16402, 2115881 Ontario Limited Mattamy Homes 556, 560, and 576 Conservation Drive. Any persons who want further notification of this application, including the passage of any bylaw, should sign the appropriate register in the binder located on the desk at the rear of the council chambers. As there are more than one binder, please make sure you're signing the appropriate one. Will the clerk please advise council of the method used to give notice of the meeting and the dates notice was given?
Notice was advertised in the KW Record on June 26, 2025, and hand-delivered by staff or emailed on July 10th, 2025 to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, to public agencies, to all persons who signed in or spoke at the informal public meeting held on February 26, 2018, and to all persons who requested further notice.
Thank you very much. John Voss, the planner, will now give a brief overview of this application. Welcome, John.
Good afternoon, Mayor McCabe, members of council, and members of the public. As noted, this is the formal public meeting for draft plan of subdivision and zone change applications for 556, 560, and 576 Conservation Drive. Brief description of the location of the lands. The subject lands are located on the north side of Conservation Drive, west of Roy Schmidt Road, and the Conservation Meadows neighborhood. 2 other subdivisions were recently approved directly east and south of the subject lands, which are labeled on the map. To the west is Beaver Creek, which flows through a portion of the subject lands, and to the north is Woolwich Township. The official plan designates the lands as low-density residential, open space, and urban area. The Beaver Creek Meadows District Plan provides additional policies for development in this area. The applications conform to the official plan. The lands are zoned Zone Change Application, or ZC, which recognizes the active zoning application. If the zoning application is approved, the ZC zone will be replaced with various zone categories, which I'll discuss momentarily. This is the proposed draft plan of subdivision, which includes a park, an elementary school, several new roads, and various residential dwellings, including singles, towns, and stacked towns. I'll describe the plan in more detail on the next slide. This is a graphical image of that same draft plan, just for a bit more clarity. The area colored yellow will be zoned RBC2, which permits single, detached, and semi-detached dwellings. The area colored pink will be zoned RBC3, which permits freehold townhouses. The area colored purple along Conservation Drive will be zoned RBC4, which permits stacked townhouses and up to 4-story apartments. The area colored blue will be available for the Waterloo Region District School Board to construct a new elementary school. Directly west of the school block will be a neighborhood park, which will include various active and passive recreation amenities. The other areas colored green on the image will be a stormwater management facility, protected open space lands, and various trails and walkways. A portion of the lands along the northwest corner of the development will be developed in a future stage, or stage 2, and those will be in conjunction with lands to the west. The applicant has requested several site-specific zoning amendments to support the residential development. Staff recommends support of the following amendments listed on the slide, amendments to the RBC2 zone specifically, primarily due to the reduced lot depth of 29 meters for specific blocks, which are labeled as Area A on the image. Similar site-specific amendments are requested for townhouses in the RBC3 zone due to reduced lot depth. Staff recommend approval of these amendments for reduced lot area, reduced frontage, and rear yard setback. The applicant has requested various amendments to the RBC4 zone as well, specifically for cluster development of stacked townhouse buildings and an increase in the overall density to 300 bedrooms per hectare. Staff recommends support of the specific amendments listed on the screen. holding symbol will be applied to a portion of the lands along Conservation Drive to require an updated noise study prior to the approval of the site plan application to ensure noise from the traffic will be mitigated appropriately. The applicant has also requested various site-specific zoning amendments. Having reviewed these amendments in detail, including through visits to other neighborhoods with similar zoning regulations in Kitchener and Cambridge, measurements of the concept plans and current house designs, and discussion with other city departments, I do not recommend approval of this list of amendments as outlined in the staff report. The staff report also contains an extensive list of conditions for the draft plan of subdivision. However, the applicant has requested some last-minute changes to a few of the conditions in order to provide clarity and expedite final approval. I've cleared these amendments with the Region of Waterloo, WRDSB, and internally with legal and senior management. I can provide more explanation of these amendments if required. In closing, staff recommend that City Council approve zoning bylaw amendment Z1614 and draft plan of subdivision 30T 16402 for the lands at 556 to 576 Conservation Drive, subject to the conditions recommended by staff and with the amendments discussed on the previous slide. Staff also recommend that Council delegate authority to the City's Director of Planning to make administrative and minor modifications to the subdivision. And finally, staff recommend that Council authorize an extension of 5 years to replace 2 dwellings which were demolished. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available to respond to questions.
Thank you very much, John. Questions from council? Councillor Bodley.
Thank you. Through Mayor McCabe, I have a couple of questions. So my first one speaks to the amendments that staff are not supporting. So in particular, and you can feel free to separate these if you'd like, but I'm taking them all sort of together. So in particular, the front yard setbacks, the side yard setbacks, and the porch projections. And I'm wondering if staff can highlight some of the concerns, particularly, and I intend to ask this to the proponent in a moment, particularly as it relates to what was found when you went and looked in some of the other municipalities where these were permitted, and what some of the concerns are that staff have as pertains to things like grading and drainage, landscaping, snow storage, access. If you could speak to some of those things for council, I would appreciate that.
For sure. It's extensively listed in the staff report through Mayor McCabe to Councillor Bodley. I've listed many of the concerns in the staff report, which are based on feedback from city staff, from other departments who deal with complaints on issues like drainage, where water isn't adequately draining from the rear yards to the front yards for other neighborhoods here in the city. And also through site visits of walking through neighborhoods and talking to homeowners of their experience living in these homes, some of the neighborhoods which have been in place for 15, 20 years. So some of the regulations that we're recommending not be supported, such as the front yard setback, reduction to 5 meters, and porch projections into the front and flankage yard, is the provision of landscaped open space in the front yard and the significant impact that would have for viability of planting trees or enough separation between the street. So as you're walking down the sidewalk, you don't feel like the house is right there, impacting your experience as a pedestrian. There is a 2-meter easement along the front of every property and the flankage side of every property for city utilities, and so you can't plant a tree in that 2-meter easement area. If we were to apply the front yard setback and allow a 1.5-meter porch projection, it would leave 1.5 meters for planting, which isn't sufficient for a mature tree to grow. And so for various reasons, the front yard and flankage yard projections were not supported. Similarly, with the side yard setback reductions, the request is for 1.2 meters standard to remain on the one side, the side of the habitable portion of the dwelling, but for the garage portion to be reduced to 0.6 meters. And that setback is about 2 feet. And when we think about how close that would be for your property line to the house, there's numerous reasons why that wasn't something that we could support and recommend support of. Even just from a functional perspective of putting up a ladder to repair the side of your house, when you have 2 feet to vertically put up a ladder adjacent to the side of your house, it just isn't possible safely. And so for many reasons, as outlined in the report, these amendments are ones that we're just not able to recommend support.
Did you have a follow-up to that?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for that, and appreciate you highlighting those things to council here. Can you maybe give me a little bit more feedback about when you went to the site visits to other municipalities? Were you sort of interviewing or talking to residents of those properties and getting feedback, or were you just sort of observing some of the challenges that came up? And if you could highlight a little bit more for us today what some of those conversations were like, I would appreciate that too.
Through Member Cape to Councillor Bodley. I visited several different neighborhoods in Kitchener and Cambridge, 4 of them in particular, where these regulations have been effectively constructed, but the ramifications of actually being livable in the after fact has been something that as I walked up and down the streets, just to pause and observe how each individual house was laid out, how driveways are paired up or not paired up, where there are trees and where there's not trees on lengths of streets. And through that, as people being out doing yard work, they've paused to say, what are you looking at, sir? And so having these conversations, or the one I snapped a picture of the front porch a couple weeks ago, and the homeowner came out and said, I see you're taking pictures of my house, can we talk? So yeah, more than happy to chat. And his comment back was, when I bought my property, I thought the city would make sure that these regulations would have been applied up front so that these details such as side yard setbacks would have been resolved so that I have place to pile my snow in the winter. And the other comments he had provided at that. So it's helpful to have those conversations with homeowners and hear their lived experience of what it's like living in those homes, which they're very happy in the location, and there's a lot of benefits to some of the details of how those subdivisions have been laid out, but there are really critical points that they identified without prompting as to why they don't, what their issues were and what they would have changed.
Perfect, thank you. I have one other question.
Sure,
if I may,
go ahead.
Member
Yeah.
Gibb. And actually, this isn't really a question, it's just more of a comment, I guess. But is it possible for you to bring back the map of the broader area? Yep, that's fine. And so I wanted to highlight that there are permissions currently contemplated for mixed-use development along Conservation Drive, and the proponent here is not planning to utilize those permissions and is looking at residential only, which I totally appreciate and understand. However, I do want to highlight that in this broader area of the city, if we're looking at building 15-minute communities, if we're looking at livable communities, we do need commercial space out, commercial uses out in this area. And so while I understand that the developer or the proponent here is not mandated or required by any means to utilize the RMU permissions that they may have, or the mixed-use permissions that they may have, I do want to highlight that where Greenacre Park is highlighted at the moment in the Beaver Creek Meadows District Plan, there is a large commercial block that is proposed there, and I only want to take this opportunity today to highlight that if and when we do see a application come forward for those lands, I think it is particularly important for us to hold firm on the fact that we need commercial space out in this area of the city. It was thoughtfully planned as part of the Beaver Creek District Plan. And I think given that we're not seeing any of the other mixed-use permissions being activated out here, it's just really important that we ensure that there are commercial uses out in this part of the city. So I just wanted to highlight that for a potential future meeting that may come forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baudelaire. Good note for sure. Councillor Vasek.
Thanks through Mayor McCabe. 2 questions as well, and one related to Councillor Baudelaires' question. I had a question about grocery stores. And you did indicate that there may be a grocery store in the area, because the closest one, when I Googled it, was like 40-minute walk to both of them, a Food Basics and a Sobeys. Could you elaborate on if there will be a grocery store and where it'll be?
Through Member Cape to Councillor Vasek. The block that Councillor Bodley was indicating on the Greenacre Park on the southeast side of Conservation and Beaver Creek is planned to allow, its neighborhood commercial is the designation that would be proposed here, which would allow a grocery store as well as other convenience retail, pizza shop, those sort of neighborhood uses. And we can think of other plazas such as the Zares Plaza at Fisher, Hellman and Herb, or the Sobeys at Columbia and Iron Needles. the Zares over at Lincoln and University. So there's various other small neighborhood plaza sized properties that are adequately sized and have the permission for those uses. And that's the intent for this corner on the southeast side, would be a grocery store and those other conveniences. I'll also highlight that in the Activa subdivision along Conservation, there is a block that is zoned RBC 5, which does allow a mix of uses, including some convenience retail on the ground floor and then some residential above. So there may be those convenience options provided without having to cross Conservation Drive.
Okay, thanks. And then my next question is about the archaeological assessment and if there was engagement with any Indigenous communities or nations through that.
Through Mayor McCabe to Councillor Vasic, an archaeological assessment was completed for the lands, included a stage 4 for 2 different spots on the property where artifacts were identified. My understanding is Indigenous groups were not included in that assessment. The archaeologists indicated that it was because the artifacts that were found were from the recent century and not associated with Indigenous time periods. That's the current standard practice, is my understanding, by the archaeologist, and that report was submitted to the province and accepted and registered with their files.
Okay, I guess that's really interesting that wouldn't be sort of a standard process, given there are still Indigenous people who live on these lands and are trying to reclaim their original lands. And so I'm curious about what our internal processes could be to ensure future opportunities for engagement with Indigenous nations. And thinking back to last month when Six Nations was here, we learned of the consultation protocol. So can you provide a little bit of context around where we're going with that and how long that might take?
Thank you. It looks like Joel wants to respond to that. Thanks for the question, Councillor.
Yeah, through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Vasic. The City of Waterloo took over regional planning responsibilities as of January of this year, and that included archaeological assessments, and so now that process is within our purview. We have been working with the Mississaugas and Six Nations on developing protocol for the circulation of planning applications and consultation relating to planning applications. I received a final draft of the protocol for Six Nations last week, so we're very close to concluding that, and we are advancing discussions with the Mississaugas. So those are well underway, and we hope to be able to improve on past practices and advance our consultation with the local Indigenous groups as we move all types of planning applications forward, including plans of subdivision. So we're advancing those initiatives.
Thanks. And I can't recall if we learned at that meeting if the consultation protocol will come to council for us to review it or have an opportunity to ask questions on it, or will that just be an operational document?
Through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Vasic. Right now, it's just an operational document, but I'm certainly happy to provide it to council when it's complete.
Yeah, I have some further questions just about what is a protocol? Is it something that can be required? Do we have any legs behind it? Is it just a nice to have? So I do have further questions about it. Not appropriate for today. This was just kind of a jumping off point for me to want to know a little bit more. So anyways, I guess I'm requesting if we might be able to see or discuss that, whether it's in public or if I can just have an opportunity to discuss it with you at some point. And has the Indigenous Advocate for the City been involved in this process?
You mean in the process with the framework, or are you talking about the development that we're under discussion today?
The framework, because there was no Indigenous consultation for this.
Okay,
yeah,
true,
yeah.
Right.
Through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Vasic. Yes, Brian's been involved in certain aspects of it.
Great, so we'll look forward to that, the update on the framework. So other questions, Councillor Roach.
Thank you for your presentation, John. John, you mentioned that you visit other municipalities and you spoke with the residents. And during your presentation, you talked about side setbacks and possible water issues. And did you hear from residents or the other municipalities, maybe your peers, about have there been any water issues in Cambridge, Kitchener?
Through Mayor McCabe to Councillor Roach. I did not reach out to other municipalities, but in talking with my colleagues in our utilities and infrastructure department. It's my understanding that we do receive many inquiries about this. I don't know if Ron wants to provide some feedback as he's reaching for his microphone.
Thanks, Commissioner Ormson.
Thanks, Mayor McCabe, through you to Councillor Roach. Yeah, good question, Councillor Roach. Essentially, when we think about how these lot grading and drainage plans work, it's to move water from the rear yards to the front to the street where it can be conveyed through the road network and the city's stormwater management system. And when you overbuild a lot, what happens is the rear yard of the house essentially it causes a damming effect. And then when over time, when lot grading settles and people do rear yard modifications, or they add fences, or they add patio stones, do all the normal things that a homeowner will want to do with their lot, it changes the drainage such that the water either ponds in the backyard, it either moves onto neighboring properties, or in some cases moves into people's basements. And I can tell you, I've been part of discussions with the Municipal Engineers Association Development Committee for 2 decades. This is a problem that is out there with other municipalities. And oftentimes homeowners, it causes disputes between homeowners because they can't resolve them, the drainage problems that is, and they often want to involve the municipality where we have limited authority because it becomes a civil matter at that point. So in John's report on page 19 and 20, I think he's got a really long list of technical reasons that indicate why these very narrow side yard setbacks cause those type of drainage and grading problems.
Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, follow-up for Ron. Ron, do we have other homes in Waterloo that have the setback that the proponent is suggesting?
Through you, Mayor McCabe. That's right, Councillor Roach. We have a couple of smaller areas that were developed with, I'll call it sort of on a trial basis, very narrow, in fact, 0.3 meter or so side yards. And we have had problems with those neighborhoods, and that's why consciously we've steered clear of that, because we know that there's not enough room for a fence, there's not enough room to store recycling bins. Now with the region's hard-sided recycling containers that will be rolled out across the region, there's going to be even more pressure for people to store them. People generally don't want to put that stuff in their garage, so they need space. They need a reasonable amount of room to install an air conditioning unit, all those things that the side yard is needed for. So our experience in Waterloo has not been great, where we've tried to really restrict the side yards down to very, very narrow tolerances. If we think about it, council's desks here are about the width of maybe even slightly more than what's being proposed here for a side yard. So if you can imagine, that's the distance between your neighbor's wall to your house. It's very, very narrow.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ormson Commissioner Ormson and Councillor Roach. Any other questions from council? I was just wondering, Ron, if you could remind us how I believe there's headwaters in that area, are there not? Like how those are being protected with this, despite this development?
The Beaver Creek, which is part of the Laurel Creek larger watershed network, Beaver Creek starts to the north and flows south on the west side of these lands, but it does pass through a portion of the lands. Of that portion that is subject to this application, those lands are being protected by being transferred to the city and zoned for conservation. So it's not just the creek, but also a wetland area and other natural features that will all be protected as a result of this application.
Thank you. It's good to know that that will be protected. My other question is just about the roads. And it's because it said that they can be 18 to 20 meters, the whole width, when you include the portion that's going to still be the city owned for all our utilities and things like that. Can we, we know that the narrower a road is, the slower a driver will go, and then, that reduces the, potential for, I'm assuming there'll be children or other, people who using the space, right? So, can we stipulate that the roads are more narrow while we still maintain the right-of-ways that the city needs? Has that been contemplated in this? I mean, again, I'm just thinking back to some of the speeding conversations we've had, and one of the big challenges is around legacy road design, right? Because these wide streets that are straight just, you know, encourage people to speed whether they intend to or not.
Good question. The Esker Lake and this section of Pine Ridge Trail are 20-meter road width, and then all the other streets in this subdivision are 18 meters. 18 meters is not the asphalt. That's all the boulevards. So that's some grass, the sidewalk, more grass, the curb, bike lanes, the vehicle lanes, and all the other utilities and features that might go into that. So along Esker Lake Drive, there is also multi-use trails and sidewalks on the road, and so that extra 20 meters will accommodate all those other features that go into it. Traditionally, the asphalt width is wider than what we build today. I don't remember the precise measurements of that, but my understanding was about 7.5 meters is what we do for asphalt today. So everything else is all the grass and the landscaping, street lights, all those other things go into it. So we are working to reduce how much asphalt is being used in order to control traffic, as well as just to increase permeability within that boulevard space as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And then just my other question is about the school. Do you know, is it going to be, maybe this is too detailed, but like, is it going to be multi-storied? I'm just, and then, and through this process, like, is there an ability to like just indicate the city's need for and the neighborhood's need for, you know, the community use of space, you know, in our, because they will have a significant amount of like a yard or a public area around there, like because if they build up, like a lot of our developments are happening, then it just allows for more, you know, I don't know, maybe even twinning like one of the Catholic schools to it, and you know, and adding more capacity there. But certainly, like, how do we make sure that in that the neighbors who will be living in this area are going to have access to the space around the school?
The school board will do their own process of designing how the site's going to be used. Could be multi-stories like the Vista Hills Public School. It could also include a daycare. There's various other iterations that it could include. And it may come down to when they get their funding to actually construct this and how the final design will lay out. So it's very early to determine what that could be. But from a big picture perspective, when we're looking at the school block, we are proposing that the neighborhood park would be right adjacent to the school, so that there can be some efficiencies of sharing where the green space is, the outdoor play areas, those sort of details, and then also how the trail networks connect in to get people throughout the neighborhood and through adjacent neighborhoods in order to access that school.
Okay, but we can't stipulate that we prefer, or we can just share what our preferences may be, whatever those may be.
That's correct. My understanding is the school boards are exempt from site plan process and everything else. There's very few controls that we have to stipulate that.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, seeing no further questions then, we have a delegate, if there's anyone present today who wants to speak to this application. We know we have the return of Kristen Barisdale from GSP Group, and welcome back, Kristen. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you. I just want to note, too, that I have Brad Tressler here from Mattamy Homes, who can answer any questions that may come up with respect to the proposed development or the building product, et cetera. I'll keep this brief. So John's touched on this. What you are considering this evening is a low-rise residential draft plan of subdivision. Area in yellow is all intended to be single detached. The area in light pink is intended to be street fronting townhouses. And the area in the darker purple or the darker pink is intended to be multiple, more intensified residential uses. As John noted, we are providing for a school block as part of the proposed development. And just to touch on this, there was an extensive element of design that was put into this, and revisions and refinements to this draft plan based on what the school board's expectations were with regards to that school block, both in terms of size, some of the synergies that can be found placing it next to a park, as well as requirements for street frontages so that they can ensure that they are separating parent drop-off from bus drop-off from staff parking. So that's ultimately what you're seeing in front of you this evening. There's a stormwater management block. We are providing for a trail system along the north property boundary. It's connecting to the existing trail that comes up off of Rideau Street right now. It kind of terminates there, so it'll be providing a trail connection across the north end of the property. And then as John talked about, providing for the ultimate protection of the existing natural feature. The proposed development is intended to provide residential units, dwellings, in the range of 376 dwellings to 558 dwelling units. As part of the consideration of the proposed development with the city and in consultation with the city, we were asked to provide a number of pretty important concepts to the city to demonstrate how some of these blocks will be operated in the future. What you see on the left-hand side is a conceptual park design that was submitted to the city. It incorporated some of their requirements in terms of passive and active space as well as trail connections. You can see there's quite an extensive amount of tree planting and landscaping that was required. There's a basketball court, there's a play structure area for smaller equipment, there's a play structure area for larger equipment, also showing a rink connection along Pinery Trail to the north, as well as providing for electrical, gas, and water connections to the park. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see the stormwater management block. There are some trees that are proposed to be removed along the edge of the existing open space or natural feature. As a requirement, the city has an expectation that we provide for a slightly enhanced compensation planting. So we had to provide the swim block as a demonstration to the city to ensure that we could provide for those compensation tree plantings and ensure that we're providing equivalent canopy cover. And then finally, as part of the draft approval, we provided a concept to the city or a map showing the extensive active transportation network. All the areas that you see highlighted in red are intended to be trail connections or sidewalk connections. And then the areas that you see in green are the areas that you see in red are trail or multi-use trails, and the area you see in green are traditional on-street sidewalks. As John touched on, we are proposing to implement the Beaver Creek zoning that has been recommended and brought forth by the city for the existing developments both to the east of the property as well as south of the property. I believe it was established as part of the OLT hearing associated with Northgate and Cartway. We did have a number of site-specific requirements that specifically reflected the products that Mattamy builds that John has touched on. We understand that staff is support of most of those, but there are a few important considerations that we're hoping that council would consider this afternoon. Firstly, the reduced front yard setback. So we've asked for a front yard setback of 5 meters, whereas the city has proposed 6 meters, and that would include a private street line setback of 6 meters to the garage. The intent of this request is to bring the habitable active portion of the house closest to the street so that the garage itself is not the prominent feature. Bringing active porches to the street obviously provides for animation and interaction within the community. It does include sufficient space for parking. The intent of this application is to ensure that to make sure that the habitable portion, like I said, is the prevalent feature at the front of the house and that the garage is kind of the secondary feature. There was a letter that was submitted to council, I believe it was last Thursday, kind of outlining a little bit more justification and commentary with regards to some of these setbacks. As part of that letter, we had noted that there are similar standards that the city has in place right now that apply to the city that do provide for reduced front yard setbacks, again, bringing that habitable portion of the dwelling closer to the street while providing for sufficient setbacks to the garage. The second setback or adjustment we're asking for is a minimum side yard requirement of 1.2 meters on one side and 0.6 meters on the other side. So I think it's, first of all, important to clarify that we're not asking for the 0.6 to be applied to both sides. It is one side will have the 1.2, which is the standard the city has applied, and one side will have the 0.6 side yard setback. The intent of this is to apply to only the single detached residential dwellings in the subdivision. As noted in the correspondence that was submitted to the city, this is a widely accepted and used regulation throughout not just Waterloo region, but Ontario. It is applicable or it has been developed in Kitchener, Cambridge, Guelph, Brantford, Milton, Barrie, just to name a few. It's also a standard that has been implemented in Kitchener zoning bylaw and is currently being contemplated in the City of Cambridge's draft zoning bylaw. It's not a matter of us asking for replication of a standard, but rather using a standard that has been applied across the province and proven successful. There is an affordability consideration that relates to the specific side yard setbacks as well. Mattamy, as a builder and a developer, does quite extensive consultation, workshops, feedback groups with their residents, with their purchasers, with potential purchasers. And homeowners have continually continually expressed concerns about paying for land they're not using in the side yards. As noted in the correspondence that we submitted, there could be approximately about a $40,000 savings for getting rid of those 2 to 3 feet of side yard that is directly passed on to the homeowner. This is just a concept illustrating existing products that Mattamy has right now and how these reduced side yards would work. So you can see that they're not necessarily mirrored or twinned. One side yard is reduced and one side is their standard 1.2 meter setback. The area hatched in red, I'm going to zoom into that a bit. So you can see at this point the sufficient setbacks or the setbacks between the units themselves. Yes, there is one side yard that is reduced, but there is sufficient separation between both units. This also demonstrates, I know some of the concerns that have been expressed was the ability for on-street parking. As we've discussed, or I've noted in the letter, Mattamy has quite extensive experience building this product, and they've learned over time. As example, twinning driveways, where you have a 0.6 and a 0.6 side yard next to one another, doesn't necessarily provide for an ideal streetscape. It potentially does cause problems in terms of snow storage. So this is a kind of a layout on the street that they have refined over the years. And then finally, we're asking consideration for a porch encroachment of 1.5 meters for an unenclosed porch into the front yard for the singles and towns. This would allow for a maximum or maximize a patio space or a porch, again, for those units so that you could actually put a chair on a porch. And then secondly, we're asking for a maximum encroachment of 1.8 meters for second floor balconies into the front yard, only for clustered developments. So this would apply only to those darker pink units that you would see along Conservation Drive. The intent of this is to provide for an opportunity to create private outdoor amenity balcony space for each of those residents with no impact at all on the function of that front yard. Again, that 1.8 meter encroachment would only apply to the areas highlighted in red. That concludes my presentation this evening. As I touched on, there was a letter that was provided to council that did include excerpts or a alternative zoning schedule and regulations that incorporated all the requests that we've spoken of this afternoon. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Kristen. And I know we have some questions, starting with Councillor Bodley.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor McCabe. As I had asked to staff, I'm going to ask the same question to you. You spoke a little bit to the affordability piece and the potential savings that could occur from some of the side yard setback changes that you're proposing council consider here today. I'm wondering if maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that based on your market research. You spoke a little bit of that too, but I'm wondering if maybe you could elaborate a little bit more for council about how that manifests itself from an affordability perspective.
Sure. Mayor McCabe, if you would entertain, I'll have Brad speak to that,
sure,
as he'll much more insight than I do.
Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon, through you, Chair. Thank you for the question. My name's Brad Trussler, and I'm with Mattamy Homes. And again, we thank staff for their work on this report. It's been 10 years since we filed this application, and it's been 15 years since we started work on this development. So a big thank you to staff for getting it to where we are today. Your question about affordability is really what all these requests boiled down to. We have constant feedback from our homeowners through focus groups, through past customer discussions. And what customers constantly tell us is they don't want to pay for what they don't value. And the requests you got today are items that we constantly hear that we don't value, extra land in our lot that we can't use. And that comes to front yards, side yards. And it really boils down to customers are tapped out. Affordability is the biggest issue that we're seeing. And we want to give customers exactly what they're willing to pay for in value. And these are items they're not valuing. This is not new. We've built tens of thousands of homes with zoning standards similar to what we're asking for here. A lot of cases, even tighter zoning that we're asking for here. It's promoted in, we probably build in 30 different cities throughout Ontario. And this is, I think, one of or the only city that has not asked for us to build houses with this zoning. It's widely recognized. Locally, Kitchener, Cambridge, we've been building for 15 to 20 years with zoning like this. And we're not getting extra complaints. We're not seeing, we're actually seeing a reduced amount of front yard parking, because as you pull the house and porch closer to the road, the ability to widen your driveway and park cars gets eliminated. So there's a kind of an adverse positive effect by some of the zoning we're asking for here. But it really, thank you for the question, but it really boils down to affordability. The land, the lot is the single most expensive input to our housing today. And these are ways that we're trying to take out costs for the ultimate homeowner that they don't value.
Did you follow up?
Yeah, if I can.
Yeah.
Through you, Mayor McCabe. So, not a developer and not a planner either, but I'm trying to understand the affordability piece. If the suggestion is that folks don't want to pay for land that they're not using, and now you intend to use the land, you're building a slightly larger house, is my guess, or like more floor space. Does that not increase the cost of the house? That may provide greater value, perhaps, to the person who's purchasing the property. I understand that. But how does making a bigger house reduce the cost of the house?
Through you, Chair. I think there's a couple ideas there. One is our lots are reduced in size. The houses aren't getting bigger. It's reduction in land that the house sits on. By reducing the land the house sits on can drastically change the purchase price that the homeowner needs to pay. So it's not that we're building bigger houses, it's just a reduced lot that it sits on.
Thanks. Just to follow up to that, so the affordability piece, it's passed on through the price of the house? You're suggesting that the houses that you've built in all these other communities are about $40,000 less? Is that what you're suggesting?
To the chair, absolutely. Like, it's a direct input cost to our business that we don't have to pass on to our homeowner.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roach.
Thank you for your presentation, Kristen, and your comments, Brad. We saw a picture of some of your existing products, and how is that 6-meter setback affecting your plans?
Through you, Chair, the 6-meter setback.
Will it affect your design?
The challenge, so right now, staff are recommending 6 meters at the front of the dwelling. The challenge that we have, and you'll notice in this diagram, not every house gets designed to the maximum zoning, but allows us some flexibility in our design and streetscapes. The challenge we got with the 6 meters to the front of the dwelling is our product that's designed through customer feedback loops will not work in the city of Waterloo. This would be a completely new product, and most likely the product is not what the customer exactly wants and will pay for. And that's the challenge we got with the 6-meter setback to the front.
Do you have a follow-up?
Just, yeah, a follow-up. Can you rebut the issue that our planners have come up with, the side setback and the flooding issues, or just the narrowness, putting up a ladder, storing your soon-to-come bins?
Yeah, through you, Chair. No, thanks for the opportunity to speak about that. Again, I think the proof is in the pudding. Like, we have built, and towns are continuing to approve side yards that we're asking for here. If towns had drastic problems and concerns, they wouldn't be approving this today. City of Cambridge, City of Kitchener, And again, we're building in 20 to 30 different cities within the province, and all councils and cities are approving zoning we're asking for here. So I think the answer is really, there is not a problem. If you ask someone, would they like a 12-foot side yard? The answer is probably yes, that would be great. The problem with that is they would not be able to afford the house it sits on. And this is all about a give and take. Homeowners might want more, but they don't value more, and they're not willing to pay for it. So we're not seeing flooding problems. We're not seeing drainage problems. Cities that we've been doing business in for many years continue to approve zoning like this, and we're not hearing that feedback at all. Matter of fact, we have a lot of cities that are asking us to do this type of zoning, and we have many builders replicating what we're doing in other markets because they've seen how successful it has been.
One more.
Go ahead.
So Mattamy, just off the top of my head, must be one of the bigger or biggest home builders in Ontario? Is that correct?
Through you, Chair, largest privately family-owned home building business in North America. So in Ontario, absolutely. We would be considered the largest home builder in Ontario.
If council accepts the recommendations of staff, how will that affect your building of these homes and the prices of these homes, affordability?
Through your chair, it has a big ripple effect in our organization. For starters, it's adding cost, new home designs. It's adding cost to the lot that the house sits on. So the potential homeowners that want to buy our product in Waterloo may be priced out of the market, and they go to other communities instead of buying within the community that they want to buy in. And again, it's going to add cost, it's going to add value that the homeowner isn't going to appreciate, and what's probably going to happen is it's going to price some people out of the market, or it's going to price them out to a point where they're not buying the product they would actually want to buy in the city of Waterloo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roach. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you. I have some thoughts, but first I want to follow up on thank you, by the way, for the presentation and answering the questions. Just want to follow up on something from Councillor Roach about the affordability. When you said design costs, are you saying that if the side yards and the setback are not approved as you would like, that the design costs would increase?
Through you, Chair, maybe I'll just clarify. As you can appreciate, we're not a custom home builder building one or two houses at a time. We're building hundreds, sometimes thousands of houses in a year. We use our plans. We design our plans based on what customers want. We reuse those plans in various different cities. The challenge with the zoning that staff are recommending here is none of our plans would fit on the configuration of this subdivision. So that would mean we're redesigning plans specific for Waterloo that have no other purpose other than Waterloo. With this zoning, the plans we would design probably would not be exactly what the customers are telling us they want. There's going to have to be compromises because of setbacks that we would have to adhere to.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, your plans don't fit this lot, and so to have the larger side yard setbacks means you have to adjust your plans.
Through you, Chair, the setbacks, the front setbacks, that would be the case. The side yard setbacks is a function of cost, like just the land gets, the lot gets wider and the cost of the lot. The front setbacks would actually affect the actual design of the house.
Okay. And then I don't really have a question, so I just want to think this through, and I apologize for speaking it, but your comment about affordability, which I can understand upfront costs, $40,000. However, I also would like to sort of turn to staff about that as well in terms of what we're hearing and perhaps seeing in terms of after the fact costs, if there is flooding, if there are issues, backyard flooding, whatever. So I think there's a balance there. So I hear what you're saying, and I would also like to just counter it perhaps with something, or at least ask for a little bit of input on that. As a homeowner, things certainly do cost after the fact.
And before you respond, can I just, because one of the questions just aligned with that is, when you're referencing about you don't hear complaints and that, typically, it would be our staff that hear, it would be us that hear the complaints, correct? Like, would you, I mean, I don't think that's normal, that's not normally a function of the home builder after the place is built and you've moved on to another
Well,
unit,
through you,
correct?
Chair, we've been in business for 44 years. We plan on being in this community for many years to come. We take every complaint seriously, even if it's 10, 15 years after the fact. We're not getting these calls, and if we are, we're on the job rectifying it, but we're not getting these calls.
Okay, oh, sorry, go ahead,
If I
Kristen.
could add to that too, Mayor McCabe, we have been having discussions with city staff on these zoning regulations probably for a good 5-6 years now, asking about the differences and asking for these provisions to be applied. Through some of that work, we had reached out personally to the zoning officials, both at the City of Cambridge as well as the City of Kitchener, to get feedback from them, and neither municipality was able to provide us any documented recorded information with regards to complaints specifically related to side yard setbacks, drainage, et cetera.
Okay, thank you for that. So then I'll turn to, I don't know, John or Joel to respond to Councillor Rowe's question.
Through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Rowe. I don't have that answer, and I don't know if we track that information, because some of the costs are all based by the private homeowner to deal with, so it's not something that we would necessarily have that information of, unfortunately.
Thank you. I didn't anticipate you would, but I just wanted to raise that. Like, I know I've certainly had private issues, civil issues in the ward. So that's basically the point that I'm trying to make, is I understand the upfront costs, but there are certainly costs that aren't anticipated after the fact. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And just another follow-up question I had, I'll just ask now, is when you're talking about the front yard, because so if what you're suggesting is approved, then there's no room to plant trees on the front yard. So it's presumably in other places where this design has been used, people haven't, there's no trees in those communities, on those front lawns, or, because I mean, that is a big thing, like, you know, I mean, our climate I don't know what the temperature is out there today, but like a tree can really, I mean, it beautifies, it cools, et cetera, et cetera. So that is a concern of mine, that they wouldn't allow that. But is that not something that you've heard from people in other communities? I'm just surprised that people wouldn't maybe want that on their front lawn.
The city has a street tree planting bylaw. We're planting street trees on every lot here. It's not that these roads don't have street trees. Limited opportunity, and not every house is going to be set to the maximum extent possible, so there will be some opportunities, but street trees will be on the boulevard like every other street in the city of Waterloo. So there's lots of opportunities for trees. One opportunity that the city of Waterloo has is they also have a 2-meter gas easement in front of the lot, which allows for another 2 meters of grass that we're not typically, actually I don't think we have any cities in the province that are actually, has a standard with that extra 2 meters. So there's in comparison to what we're building elsewhere, you're going to see larger front yards than what we would be typically building in, let's say, a Cambridge or a Kitchener, just because of that easement.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Are there other questions from council on this? I'm just going to double check if I had any other question here. No, okay. Oh, I always ask about the energy plans for this. This was something that, oh, sorry, these aren't condos or rentals, so this would be up to the individuals to choose. So that's a reflex question for me. Anyway, okay, so seeing no other questions from council, then if we have no more delegations, this formal public meeting is concluded and the application is now opened to council for a motion and for debate. Go ahead, Councillor Bodley.
Well, I'm happy to put the motion on the floor, and then we can have a discussion around some of the pieces that the proponent was asking about, but I'll get it up.
Oh, sorry, yeah, there is a revised motion. Is that what you've provided at the desk for everyone? Do you want to just provide a brief explanation for that, Julie?
Keep
I'll perhaps ask John to speak to that, but I just wanted to, for clarity, so that everyone knows what motion they're looking at.
Okay, thanks.
Mayor McCabe, the motion that's on the screen and on everyone's desks is a revised motion that addresses the 5 draft plan conditions that the applicant has requested be modified, and that staff have agreed is appropriate to make those changes. So it's just to clarify that those items I through V are the changes to this recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much. So, so Councillor Bodley, I'll go back to you then.
Okay,
You want
great.
to put this on the table?
Yeah, happy to.
Okay.
So whereas council has considered all written and oral submissions, and whereas council has considered the professional opinions of planning staff, therefore be it resolved, 1, that council approve IPPW 2025-041. 2, that council approve zone change application Z-16-14 211-5881 Ontario Limited, Mattamy Homes for 556, 560, 576 Conservation Drive, as set out in section 8 of IPPW 2025-041. 3, that council approve draft plan of subdivision 30T-16402, 211-5881 Ontario Limited, Mattamy Homes for 556, 560, 576 Conservation Drive, as set out in section 8 of IPPW 2025-041, with the following modifications to the site-specific conditions of subdivision approval. I modify condition 1.4 by adding to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning. I modify condition 2.14 by removing the text at its sole expense. I remove condition 4.18 entirely. IV modify condition 5.5 by removing block 19. V modify condition 5.16 by removing the requirement of an agreement between the owner and the region of Waterloo. 4, that council delegate authority to the city's Director of Planning to make administrative and minor modifications to any standard condition of subdivision approval and/or site-specific condition of subdivision approval in relation to draft plan of subdivision 30T-16402 and minor red line revisions to draft plan of subdivision 30T-16402. 5, that council further extend the timeframe for 2115881 Ontario Limited to obtain a building permit for the replacement of the dwelling unit at 560 Conservation Drive and the dwelling unit at 576 Conservation Drive until October 30th, 2030, pursuant to subsection 6.A of the city's demolition control bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Bodley. Did you have any comments that you wanted to make, or as the ward councillor? No pressure. Oh, sorry, we do need a seconder. Is there a seconder? Councillor Freeman, thank you.
I'm going to see if anybody else has any comments
Does
or
anyone
questions.
have any comments or questions? Okay, Councillor Roach?
Housing affordability in my ward, and probably in all of our wards, is the #1 concern that I hear from my constituents. I appreciate the staff's, the rationale behind your recommendations, but I believe we have a responsibility to explore every option that could increase housing supply without compromising our core planning principles. I think Mattamy's raised some very valid points with regard to affordability, and you spoke of design so that resonate with residents, such as the side yard. So I would like to move the recommendations before us with further direction. And Julie, can I just read what I would like, or
Well,
no?
yeah,
or-
you need
or
to-
Then hopefully I'll get a seconder. If not, I can.
So you're
rescind.
looking to amend the
Yes,
motion that
amend the
Councillor
motion,
Bodley
right.
put on? Okay. Go ahead.
I'll ask perhaps John and Joel for confirmation, but I believe if you were looking at changing any of the site-specific conditions, then it would likely be an amendment to recommendation 3, but maybe, John, you could confirm.
Well, would it not be helpful for Councillor Roach to explain what it is that he's looking to amend?
Sure. I mean,
first?
it's simple. I'd like to ask that in addition to the recommendations before council, that direction be given in the matter of the technical decisions making setback, about the setback distances of the RBC 2 and 3 zones to the city's Director of Planning to determine the appropriate side yard and front setbacks for this subdivision in relation to the staff recommendations versus the developer's request to reduce the setback. Yeah.
So you're going to email that to the clerk
I'll
so we
send it
can
right
see
now.
it on,
Yeah, I
and
just
then you're going to
wrote
pull
it,
that up
so-
on screen? But are you suggesting, just so we understand, that are you suggesting that you that we approve the proponent's recommendation on this, on the setback?
Actually, what I will do right here, I'm thinking of compromise here. So if I could just say it again, I'd like to ask that in addition to the recommendations before council, that direction be given in support of recommendation 4, to specifically refer the matter of the technical decision making about the side yard setback distances of the RBC2 and RBC3 zones to the city's director of planning to determine the appropriate side yard setbacks for the subdivision in relation to the staff's recommendation versus Matamy's. I can just send that to you, Rook.
Okay, I think I'll need to see that on screen.
Okay.
Because, just so that I follow along, because if you're suggesting that it goes back to staff,
No, to the director, yeah.
to the director of planning for his recommendation, I mean, we already have his recommendation. So what is it that you were,
I just think, as I said, housing affordability is the number one concern I hear, and there's, I'm sure, every single one of us. So I think we have a duty to, a responsibility to just consider every option. This builder builds more homes than any others, and we have not seen, and I don't think Cambridge or Kitchener, where they've built, has talked about their flooding issues.
okay, so you're asking for this to go back to Mr. Cotter so that it's reconsidered? Is that what you're asking for?
think
Or do we
you
have
have-
it, do we have it pulled up? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Freeman, did you have a clarification
I
question?
don't know if this is helpful, but I'm willing to just actually consider the request by the delegate today without sending it back to staff. And I hear what you're saying, Councillor Roach, and I think I'm actually okay with the 0.6 and the 1.2 because combined, the math is 1.8. And in my ward, the R5 zoning on Yarmouth, the side yards are set at 0.9. So you put 2 houses side by each, you get 1.8. So what I see being suggested here is to put 2 houses side by each, where you have 1.6 in the one house and 1.2 in the other, which comes out to 1.8, which is the same as what we have in at least parts of my ward and parts of other wards, because I went and checked where we have like the R5 zoning. So I'm kind of okay with just, I'm not sure that I agree with I had some questions about the front yard and how that overhang works, because we already have zoning in the city where we allow front yards at 6 meters, so an overhang off the first floor over that doesn't seem to also be a big issue in my mind's eye, because we already have land that functions that way. So I'm kind of okay with like putting the motion on the table that the applicant is asking for and seeing whether council's comfortable with it, I guess. Like, but it's up to you, Councillor Roach.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, I'm just going to look to the clerk here to provide a little bit of clarity in terms of the process.
Thank you. So the applicant did submit some revised recommendations which really speak to Schedule C, which is built into recommendation 8. So if we look at the red font that's on the screen, maybe I'll get Joel and John to confirm. If we built that into recommendation 3 that Rook had on the screen already, would that in effect build into the motion all of the recommendations from the applicant?
I think it would be an amendment to recommendation 2, 2 being the zoning. 3 was more focused on the subdivision and the conditions of the subdivision, but any changes to the recommendations from the zoning would be a change to recommendation number 2. And yeah, I think that answers the question enough for now.
So then if I could, through the mayor to the rest of council, just because it would take Rook a moment to revise that wording, if we could take just 2 minutes to make sure that we have that correct, then we
Sure,
could
that
have
would
that
be
on
helpful.
screen for council consideration.
Okay. Great, we'll give you a couple minutes to do that. Thanks.
Mayor McCabe, while staff is looking at this recommendation, I thought of a question for the applicant, and I wondered if I could ask it, or if it's too late. Okay, that's fine.
So I'll just ask the clerk, Julie, to explain what's up in front of us here. And then I just want to confirm with Councillor Roach, because he was the one who was making the amendment, which we are saying is friendly, but just to make sure that this is what he was intending. So go ahead, Julie. Yes. There we go.
Thank you. So what we've done on screen, you can see the blue font are the additions that were made by staff prior for council consideration, and then the red font includes all of the asks that the applicant sent to council by way of correspondence. We'll just get the font a little bit bigger from what.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you. So this may include more than you intended, Councillor Roach, but we thought it easier as a starting point to include all of the new asks that are not included in the staff report at this time. And I'll just have John actually confirm if that is accurate.
Through Member Cape, my understanding is these regulations do reflect what the applicant was requesting in order to amend those specific zones to add in those regulations as requested.
Okay.
And then if I could, sorry, just there was one additional one at the very bottom, which we've added, which is new, which is really intended to make sure that we have the language proper, since we're
Right.
doing this on the fly.
Okay. And I guess just to be clear, we don't want to construe this as the ones in red, these are not staff recommendations. So even though staff have just worked to have them added in, I just want to be clear, those were not, those continue to be things that the staff is not recommending. So Councillor Roach, I just want to double check, because when you were speaking to this amendment, you were talking about, I thought you were talking about the side yard, but this has everything in there. So did you intend to put everything in there? Or
No.
were you just talking about the side yard?
Yes, Mayor, I had asked about the side yard and not these others. I'm okay with the side yard and then number 6.
And number 6.
Oh,
Oh, sorry, this part, okay. So you didn't intend to have the front yard pieces in there? I just think we should be really clear about this.
If I can, Mayor, so what Rick will do right now, just for clarity, is leave the text on screen, but just put a strike through the portions.
Yeah, okay. I mean, if others want to make other amendments, I mean, you know, we can still, you know, the motion is still on the floor for debating and discussing. So now, I just want to confirm for the record that Councillor Bodley, who had moved the motion, accepts this as a friendly amendment, which debatable if it's friendly, but if it's a.
Yeah, it would be my preference if we vote on this separately from the original motion. I wouldn't consider it a friendly amendment. I would like to discuss them separately if we could.
Okay, thanks. Julie?
So given that it's built in, you would have to, this would be an alternate motion that you're moving. That would then need a seconder and would be voted on. And then if it fails, then you would go back to your motion. But this would in effect replace your initial motion.
Are you still okay with that, Councillor Bodley? Okay, all right, great. And so Councillor Roach, yeah, no, I see you, Councillor Freeman. I just want to make sure that Councillor Roach is fine with what's on the floor. Yep.
And so in that case, Councillor, we're not going to have you read the entire Bill 73 wording over again, but if you could, we would need you to explain the reasons why you're moving this alternate motion, and then a seconder would be needed.
So over to you, Councillor Roach.
Thank you. Sorry, folks, it's almost supper time. As I mentioned, that, you know, housing affordability is the #1 concern that I hear, and from the constituents of my ward, and I appreciate the staff's recommendations. But as I said, I think we have a responsibility to explore every option, and I believe Mattamy is, as the nation's #1 builder, has raised some valid points about affordability and design. So I think it's worth looking at. And that is why I made this recommendation.
Okay, thank you. And is there a seconder for this? Councillor Freeman?
I'm happy to second this. There was just only one other piece I wanted to include, and that was the in the cluster development, the balcony off the second floor that could overhang in the front, because I just thought that made that more livable. I don't know whether Councillor Roach would be comfortable with that, and if not, then I'm happy to second this one and then put another motion on the table after.
Okay, so I guess I'll look to Councillor Roach to further amend the amended motion.
I am comfortable with that amendment.
Does that work, clerk? That's okay. Okay, so that's moved and seconded then with the two amendments. Councillor Bodley.
So I would just like to make some comments if I could. As I had said previously, definitely not a planner up here. And so whenever it comes to planning advice that we receive at council, especially when it's technical planning advice, it's something that I really take to heart. And I have a little bit of, it's why I'm not willing to support the alternative motion that my colleagues have put forward here, although I do understand where that is coming from. One of the concerns that I have is around precedent. So in my mind, when we look to this particular location of the city, there's nothing special about this location of the city that would justify having smaller side yards. I know that we have them in other areas of the city, including some areas in my ward as well too. But I suspect that if we permit these smaller side yards, that we're going to be receiving additional requests from additional developers in this area of the city. And so for me, if this is something that the city would like to pursue, I think as opposed to looking at it in this specific development, I think this needs to be something that we contemplate citywide, where we could get planning staff to come forward to us with all of their justifications about what would be an appropriate side yard setback, particularly given the affordability concerns that my colleagues brought forward there. And I think especially the thing that causes me some pause on this from a precedent perspective is that these are not things that we're talking about today. We're talking about impacts that could be happening a decade or longer from now when it comes to things like drainage and grading. And I think that that's why staff have made the recommendations that they have made. And just to speak to the affordability piece here, if I'm being very honest with you, frankly, I'm not necessarily convinced that there's going to be an affordability impact here. I am also very concerned about pitting affordability against livability and against technical feasibility and engineering. I think there's a concern that I have there. Truly, if this proponent wanted to see much more affordable development in these areas, we would be looking at maybe things like towns in this areas, or stacked towns, or duplexes and triplexes. I am surprised to hear that we are most concerned about the affordability piece, or that the proponent is most concerned about the affordability piece on the fully detached homes that we know are going to be the most expensive homes in this draft plan of subdivision. And on top of that, when we talk about the side yard setback changes, I will point to what was highlighted in our report, that implementing these side yard setbacks is going to make it far more difficult for an additional dwelling unit to be implemented in any of these spaces, which again, we know is a strong affordability piece. So I'm not necessarily convinced on the affordability piece. I would for sure be open to staff continuing to monitor what is happening in other cities and how this is working on a go-forward basis, and possibly bringing forward a zoning bylaw amendment to council to consider on a citywide basis. But for those reasons, I can't really support it in this sort of site-specific draft plan of subdivision.
Thank you, Councillor Bodley. Are there others that wish to speak to this? Councillor Rowe?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Yes, I do want to speak to this as well. I echo and appreciate Councillor Bodley's comments. I also just want to as to the affordability piece, my concern here is the voices that are not here and that we're not hearing. The question of affordability, as Councillor Bodley pointed out, is applied to the most expensive homes. And the voices that aren't here are, and that we don't often hear from, are the people that are struggling and may never own a home. This is not an option for them. Affordability, for me, applies to the missing middle, the townhouses, as Councillor Bodley explained. So for those reasons, I cannot support this.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Are there any others that wanted to comment? Okay, so we have the amended motion with two different recommendations added. Sorry, not recommendations, two amendments added. So it's been moved and seconded. But Councillor Bodley, you asked if we could take the amended piece. Oh, we're just voting on this. Okay, we're just, okay. So all in favor then? All opposed? Okay, that fails then. Did you catch, you got the hands? Okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that you got the hands on that. Okay, so we'll go back to the original motion. Yeah, do you have the original motion still there? No, we don't want you to read it again. Okay, so we have the original motion back. Okay, restored. So this has been moved and seconded by Councillor Bodley and I believe Councillor Freeman, correct? Okay, all right. So is there any other comments on this part? Okay, then I will call the question. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, that is carried. Did you catch the hands on that? Okay, all right, great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Council, and for staff and clerk, including clerks, for working through those amendments. All right, so moving on, consideration of notice of motion from a previous meeting, there are none. Notice of motion, there are none. Communications and correspondence, there are none. Unfinished business, there are none. Council, are there any questions? No? Okay. I thought I saw your hand. Okay, any new business, Council? Yes, Councillor Vasek.
Thank you. I have two, and I'd like to go first because mine includes a prop that I'll need to cut up and share. So for new business, I have a new business to share.
Okay, look at
Thank
this. Props, are props allowed, clerk? In this case, props are allowed.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, it's a brownie, I guess. So this is a new business from a first-year UW student, University of Waterloo student, who loves to bake, but also wants to have a social impact with their business. And so it really was a beautiful story she was in earlier today, and it aligns with this book I was reading over the break that I just took by Robin Wall-Kimmerer, who's an Indigenous environmental biologist. And she talks about how the economy as we have it right now is based on transaction. And of course, we're going to continue to have that economy. And so this is the piece of her business that is a transaction. But Wall-Kimmerer also talks about a gift economy and the idea behind a gift economy, which she grounds in nature because she's an environmental biologist. But the idea is that there's inherent reciprocity with it. It's not always one-to-one reciprocity, but it's reciprocity because when you gift something, then that person or thing then gifts to somebody else. And so we have an economy that is reciprocal. And so her business model is, of course, to sell brownies. But it's also when she connects with people, she also offers, and they offer to her this sort of connection and information sharing specific to kind of her knowledge of the community. So it was a really beautiful way to integrate the traditional economy with this idea of a gift economy. Anyways, and so it's called Just Barely Baked, and I'll share this on Instagram and I'll tag it. And I have one more new business.
Are you sharing the brownies too?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to go first, so I have time to cut it up while other people do their new business.
Just checking.
Yeah,
That's our dinner tonight.
Yeah. I don't know if there's protein. If you have allergies, I have a list of things that's in it, so you can ask me. And the second thing I wanted to highlight was an email that we got from the museum. There's going to be a talk with Alex Sarian, and he has quite the resume. He wrote The Audacity of Relevance. He is the president and CEO of Arts Commons, which is soon to be Workland Center in Calgary, a massive performing arts center with outdoor space. He was the ED of Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts in New York City. He graduated from Western's Ivy School of Business, and he was a graduate of the inaugural Impact Program for Arts Leaders at Stanford's Graduate School of Business. And so he'll be at the museum on October 21st, 2025. Tickets are by donation, or if you wanted to get a table, you're asked to just connect with the CEO there. But in general, what he talks about is the social impact of the arts, and particularly in times of crisis, and the importance of arts in those times. So anyways.
All right, thank you very much.
Come to me for a brownie.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor Vasic. Is there no other? Oh, Councillor Freeman, okay.
Through you, Mayor McCabe. It was just I guess it's actually a question. I probably should have asked it under questions. I noticed that on the Engage WR site for our planning applications, sometimes we don't include all of the supporting reports because they're large in size. And I know that that causes challenges for me because I'm always trying to look up the reports before council meetings, in particular noise and vibration, land use compatibility, and pedestrian wind. And so I'm just hoping that maybe that can change.
Okay, so I don't know if that's a question for planning staff or for our communications director, but staff can take that away. Okay, go ahead, Joel. You wanted to speak to it?
Through you, Mayor McCabe, I can take that away.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thanks, Councillor Freeman. Anyone else that would? I'll just briefly say that this weekend is Jazz Fest, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's also Afro Vibes, and just keep checking the Create Waterloo and the Uptown BIA's websites because there's stuff happening all summer across the city. Okay, so enactment of bylaws. We need a mover, moved by Councillor Freeman, seconded by Councillor Roach. Adjournment, moved. Oh, sorry, all in favor? Okay, adjournment, moved by Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Enjoy the evening and the rest of the summer.